Hello, and welcome back to Brothers of the Serpent, a podcast of limitless conversation between two limited individuals, sitting in their 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science high upon the Edwards Plateau, which is the bottom of an ancient sea, which is pretty cool.
That's right. I think that sea is still down there. It is the Edwards Aquifer.
Yeah. Yep. We got a bunch of straws down in there.
That's right.
Sending it to San Antone.
Yeah. Yeah.
No politics.
So,
Anyway, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Shut up, Russ.
That's right.
I'm busy doing my intro here.
That's right. Intro not over. Silence.
I botched the intro, and I want a second shot at it.
You didn't botch it. That was great.
No, glad to be back here to talk about some more mysteries of the universe.
Kyle has been operating a chisel for the past 2 days.
Oh, yeah. There's something about plowing a field. I don't know. I love it. It hurts, though. I've been
Bouncing in that
bouncing
tractor.
around and jerking back and forth. And
Yeah. I can't.
when you're pulling the plow, so there's a constant like stop and go.
Yeah.
force
there's a
back and forth.
Lurching. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, man, I need to develop a chair that the seat has all these different controls, and one of them,
And it tries to float you, but man,
right, one
sometimes
of them
it just can't do it.
that I found, you can switch it on and off, and it basically unlocks a spring-loaded forward-reverse slide,
yeah.
so that the lurching
Right.
is sort of compensated, and that is key, because for the first day that I was plowing, I had that thing locked, and my ass was really chafed.
Shit.
But yeah, it's getting better. It's really weird just tearing into that dirt. And I was thinking about Enlil giving the plow to the Adamu.
Yeah.
And like in the cylinder seal that depicts him doing this, the plow is like these, the two handles, and it's got like the one.
Right. It's a wedge shape, right?
Yeah, the one little wedge.
Yeah.
And so I've been thinking about oxen. Like, man, they had to, first you have to tame these
Aurochs.
animals, the aurochs or whatever, and then some engineer had to design some way to like hook them all up together and
Right.
and
Build the harness.
and train them in such a way where you could, like, man, once they start pulling, and I was just thinking about, God, like,
Right, and the handles are you trying to guide it. That oxygen
Right.
is like
yeah,
you're supposed to try to like guide it so that it digs those nice furrows and rolls that dirt over.
oh my God, it
And
must
it
be.
hits rocks, and just,
Yeah.
man, no. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I've been thinking about, riding around in that tractor, like plowing up that field.
And you're not using a regular furrow plow, you have a chisel plow.
Right.
Yeah.
It's basically a bunch of fish hook shaped things that,
Yeah.
like sideways, where the hook is just dragging the ground.
Right. So if you start driving, it just goes
Yeah, it sucks it down.
Yeah.
And there's these two wheels on the side that you can set the levels.
Yeah.
And so the wheels will roll, and the hooks will be down below the bottom of the wheel, 10
Right.
inches
So you can
or
let
so.
it suck it all the way down, or you can set the wheels to where it kind of floats it at some particular
Right.
level. Yeah.
So today, it's been set at about 8 to 10 inches, right? And today right when I was getting done, like I noticed like it was dragging. I'm just like, man, the engine is bogging way down, and it's. I was thinking I was low on gas, and maybe it was
wheels came loose,
pulling in some water. But yeah, one of the wheels, these little wheels that are
The
about
set screws came loose.
a foot in diameter. No, it knocked the tire off the rim.
Oh shit. Yeah.
Like it broke the seal, the bead on the rim.
Right.
So I went right at the end of the day. I went and put a little strap around it and put some air in it to reseal it, and it started inflating. And I took the strap off, and I was looking at the tire, like, how high is the PSI?
Yeah.
90.
Wow.
I was like,
That's because
what?
I guess the smaller tires can take.
I was too scared to do it, dude. I put it up. I
I'll
went
put 70.
Yeah, I mean, this tire did not look like it. I was just like, dude, 90. I don't know.
Right, but it's like it's something weird about that. Like if it was a large space, 90 pounds would be too much. It would
exactly.
destroy it. But since it's so tiny,
It's a small tire, so
Yeah,
it can
yeah.
take. There's less square inches.
right, it's 90 pounds per square inch on fewer square inches. Yeah, if you try to put 90 pounds into one of those tractor tires, it would explode.
Yeah. And you would be no more.
That's right, because that tire is big. Yeah.
Those are filled with water.
Yeah, we found that out when we tried to fill them with water. Oh, This one's already full of water.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, been doing some ancient science in the field.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been watching the field change as you do it.
Yeah. So you have to plow it all in one direction, and we have a neighbor who came and consulted and told us like, "Oh yeah, you can't turn around with that plow in the ground."
Yeah,
we
you
were
have
like,
to pick
"Oops."
it up. Yeah. Whoops.
So every time I get to the end, I have to pull it up and then back up and turn around. And I'm next to a fence, and I got this huge plow on there. It's just a pain in the ass. But
Right. So you have to drag it the same way, and you can't like turn or whatever.
right. And
But,
I did that all the way across the field, dodging telephone poles. I hit my little rock cairn once and broke it, so I had to rebuild that. And then after you're done doing that, which took 2 days,
You have to
rough,
do
well,
it.
a day and a half, you have to do it again at a 45-degree angle.
degree
So you're
angle,
like, going
That's
over.
right.
Yeah.
Going against the waves.
But it's cool.
And then I'm going to get out there and disc it. And that's going to be...
You the old harrower.
yeah.
Well, you're going to trick my gym?
No, but the disc is my job.
Yeah.
The freaking chisel's your job. Disc is my job.
Whatever.
This is established. So I was going to say, for the last show, the very first thing that we did was the CIA document. And I feel like I should just point out that if anyone thinks that like I really can't read because I was going, no, I was that was what the guy was saying. Like when you're reading the transcript, the remote viewer is doing a lot of hemming and hawing because he's trying to figure out how to describe it. So I was I was skipping a lot of it, But when the guy would say, "So what do you see?" and you're reading it, he goes, and they've got it all written out. So I was kind of reading, but I just want people to know that was actually in the script. I was not like
that's what it sounded like to me. I didn't.
Okay,
think you were...
I haven't heard it yet, but I just wanted to say that that was actually part of the script.
Oh, yeah.
Because I thought of it afterwards. I was like, man, I wonder what people are gonna think. Like that dude couldn't read simple sentences. I'm like,
That sounded good.
Okay, cool. All right, and I do have another article. This is also from the Fortean Times. This one is about, it's basically the premise is strange phenomena occur much more often than people imagine, okay? So, and they have a list where they basically tell you, like, so they show you, what's routine and then, what's like less routine or whatever. So it goes through the list, but routine phenomena. Barely a day goes by without a letter delivered decades late. Okay, 112 years from Australia to England is the record. So,
what?
Yeah. Let's see. Road accident.
What was that?
What?
Whose fault is that?
The Postal Service.
But that's from Australia too, right? How long was it in Australia?
I guess it sat in Australia for 112 years, and then they finally delivered it to England. That's what I would guess. I don't know.
Yeah, delivered it to who?
Right.
Their ancestor.
Yeah,
or
it just shows up at the
not
address.
their ancestors there.
Yeah.
The other way around.
It's
their
all-
descendants.
Yeah, some from the Victorian times, whatever. It would be like 19th century.
What is this? Open it up. This is a really important message.
Yeah, can you send me that alchemy kit? Okay. Road accidents between trucks carrying fortuitous loads. One with bacon, say, colliding with a truck bearing eggs.
Yes, that's straight out of the Far Side.
Yeah, and they're
comic
saying
right
this
there.
is routine. This happens it says barely a day goes by without these things taking place. Pets navigating vast distances to return home, normally cats, but the record is held by a collie who managed, by stowing away on a boat, a 4,800-kilometer journey from Calcutta to Scotland. Wow.
Wait a minute.
A dog
And then it went back?
No, it like, I guess they lost it in Calcutta in India or whatever, and it traveled to Scotland where the family lives.
Oh, by stowing away on a
On
boat?
a boat. Like, how did he fucking know to get on a boat? Anyway, and various permutations of golfers holding in one. The odds on any ace are 27,000 to 1. So this happens. These are things that happen every day.
72 backwards.
That's right. Rings recovered. Lost rings found and returned by strangers are the small change of the phenomena world. After all, they're made of substances that endure and are often inscribed. In Hawaii, Diver Ken DeVico expects to find about 15 wedding rings a year in the sea, many of whose owners can be traced. Even if fish get there first, all may not be lost. There are cases of rings being retrieved many years later from fish and shellfish. Far less common are losers making the find, as when Karen Goad went to a Pembrokeshire beach and found a ring she had lost when bathing 10 years before. And that kind of reminds me of Dad finding his ring out there in the dirt where he was working on the tractor like 10 years ago. Remember? And he like had lost his wedding ring, and then he went out there and just, there it was in the dirt. And he's like, ah!
Yeah.
Do you remember that? That was crazy.
I remember him finding. I didn't know where it was.
Yeah, it was just like out there in the dirt where he was working on the tractor the day that he lost it.
Man,
10 years
crazy.
ago, and it just popped up out of the dirt. It's like, here I am. Okay.
Well, I lost mine, and it's at the bottom of the Medina River. I mean, the Medina Lake.
Yeah, which is
and it dried up sometime after I lost it.
It's time yet.
Went out there, spent like multiple days out there with a metal detector, and found a whole bunch of stuff, but not my ring.
That's right.
Dang it!
It's not its time yet. It will come. Okay, lightning strikes twice. Instances of people, invariably park rangers or similar, being struck more than 5 times are almost commonplace. I tell you, been struck by lightning 7 times? Why does this keep coming up? But few women have been unluckier than Martha Martica, a Bulgarian who has been widowed not once, not twice, but 3 times by lightning strikes, killing her husband.
What?
But even this pales compared to the loss suffered by the Bena Chadi Football Club in the Congo. On the 25th of October in 1998, all 11 players were killed by a lightning strike during a match, and the opposition was untouched.
Whoa, dude. Something wrong with their uniforms.
I know, it's right. They were eating something. Okay, freaky falls. Babies falling 17 floors and landing on their nappies are not the only ones to survive big drops. Last month, a woman slipped off a beachy head on Britain's south coast and was caught on a narrow ledge tens of meters from the ground. Snow often plays a part, cushioning the fall. A Japanese climber who tumbled 1,200 meters off of Mount Rishiri, for instance, and landed in soft snow and wasn't harmed. But for a true miracle, try the Swiss man who was blown by the wind from his 17th floor balcony, only for another gust to propel him safely onto a lower balcony. Holy crap.
What?
He's like, whoa! Oh my God. Okay,
somebody just walks in off of your balcony, like, hey,
yeah.
Just sorry, I
blown in with the wind. Yeah. Spooky coincidences. Many are not that unusual, like 2 people at a party sharing a name or a birthday, or even the famous coincidences between the deaths of U.S. Presidents Lincoln and Kennedy. And yet, Sir Anthony Hopkins got on the tube after a fruitless search for George Pfeiffer's novel The Girl from Petrovka. He looked down, and there on the next seat was a copy of the book, and it was his own, which had been stolen 2 years before. That's pretty weird. 2 more classics. In 2001, Laura Buxton released a balloon in Staffordshire in Britain. It was found 225 kilometers away by a girl named Laura Buxton. Neville Eben died in Bermuda when I went through this one last time. Neville Eben died in Bermuda when a taxi knocked him off his moped. A year later, his brother was killed on the same moped in the same street by the same taxi driven by the same man carrying the same passenger.
Yeah.
And best of all, in Massachusetts in 1965, Roger Lauser, 4 years old, was saved from drowning by a woman called Alice Blaze. 9 years later, Roger saw a man drowning on the same beach, dived in and saved him, and he was Alice Blaze's husband. That's pretty cool. The ironic exit. Courtesy of the not-so-grim Reaper comes the following. South African Danny Dutoy, I guess, gave a lecture warning that death could occur at any time. He sat down, popped in a peppermint, and choked to death.
Should have been a lifesaver. They have holes in the middle.
Right. In 1998, Joe Rickert was walking around Burgos, Spain, with a banner that read, "The end of the world is nigh!" And then a truck hit him. In 1988, Anderson Godwin, a murderer, reprieved from the electric chair, was sitting on a steel commode and bit through a wire while trying to fix his TV headphones, turning his metal toilet into a version of Old Sparky, which killed him. What are the odds of that? What are the odds against that?
Iron Throne.
That's right. Rather less than you might think, even for something so utterly unusual, because 9 years later, exactly the same thing happened to Lawrence Baker, a Pittsburgh prisoner who also was spared the electric chair.
Weird.
Stop fixing your freaking headphones on the metal toilet.
Some serious headphones.
Yeah. Long lost Uncle Billy. Long lost relatives like rings have a habit of turning up in the strangest ways. Sisters Barbara Small and Doreen Frost, adopted separately in 1943, bumped into each other in a butcher shop after an interval of 52 years. And just like, oh, hello, oh. Why do you look like me? John Ledbetter of Southampton had been trying for decades to trace his brother, who he had not seen for 40 years, when he met a woman who said, "You look like my husband," and the rest you can guess. 1 in a billion, 1 in a schmillion. These things happen every day.
That's cool.
Take that, Scriptards. Weird stuff happens every day.
Yep. Universe of information, right?
That's right.
I still don't really get that.
Well, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I don't understand it either. But it's like things seem to correlate by information rather than space. But we exist in like a spatial. It seems like we're existing in like a spatial dimension with a time component, right? So you would think that stuff would occur based on like where they are in the space, and things do occur like that. So, if something is next to something else, it'll be affected by it and stuff. But often there are these like synchronicities are always information chains. The reason they're like relevant to the person is because you're recognizing pieces of information. Like, how did this number that just happens to be some other specific number somewhere else like show up right here at this particular time? Like that. Those are chains of information that have nothing to do with space, and yet here they are being connected. Which to me seems like that on some level, this universe is ruled by data. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So one of the things I think about, and I don't know if this it still uses like the physical world, but I think about vibration, like in sound. I'm always analyzing sound. And I think about that, like the sound of a refrigerator turning on, right? You hear like this, or whatever, the hum comes on, and then it slowly like chills out or whatever, but it's got this specific frequency. And the way I analyze it is like, okay, that refrigerator, I could analyze that sound and determine the whole design of the engine, or not the engine, the whole design of the electric motor and the pump.
You could sort of interpolate
right, and the fluid moving through the compressor, and then how big the refrigerator is and what are the contents inside it.
Basically, like theoretically, just by the sound, you could figure out it was a refrigerator.
Right. So I think about it like that, and also that the energy or the electricity that is powering it is 60 hertz,
right,
at 120 volts or whatever, and
it's like the idea that all ship movements are contained in the waves crashing onto the beach, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think of also, I was listening to the Graham Hancock Fingerprints of the Gods again, and when in that part he's talking about crustal slippage or whatever.
Yeah.
He says something about this, and I had thought about this before, but that people with running these seismographs or whatever, picking up seismic activity, they talk about how the machine is moving all the time. It's always
It's
marking some
it's
vibration that's going on, and they're saying like you can analyze it and tell like, okay, a train went by miles away or whatever, and then this other background noise is the city that's 50 miles that way, and then there's like a say there's a quarry somewhere or whatever.
And that's really because the crust of the earth is like this thin thing floating on top of liquid, right? That's how I think of it. It's like, if you think of the thin crust floating on liquid, then you suddenly understand why these vibrations will move.
Right. Yeah. So in there, they'll pick up some seismic activity as well.
Right.
Right. And they're like, okay, that's
and no one knows where those come from either.
Right. But the other thing that they described, which was just freaking badass to me, was that removing all of that, there is this constant resonance, rumbling and all these weird things that they're like, we have no way to account for this, just stuff going on down in the bowels of the planet, just whatever,
Yeah.
But that's just so cool. So I think about like when you talk about being pure information, my knee-jerk reaction is thinking of, say, programming like ones and zeros or whatever, like information in that way. But I actually think about it in the same way, like pure information, but meaning that information is being transduced all the time into various different types of energy.
Yeah, so frequencies could be doing it. I'm not sure how this would translate into a physical thing, though. It's like
Right. That's what I'm
because
getting
they're
at,
concepts, right? That's what I'm saying. So there's something subtle happening that I think is, I mean, it may have a physical component because it obviously affects the physical world, whether indirectly or directly. Like synchronicities, strings of synchronicities, like some of them will be a physical thing where you're like, okay, what that just happened, like
Right.
something like an owl flies in front of your car, or whatever, but other ones are just ideas that don't have any kind of physical component at all, where and they're only relevant to you at that particular time because of the string of stuff before it. So
Right.
so to me, and I don't know, like I go back and forth between thinking that the whole three-dimensional thing with the time component is a function of that data, of the information, which it could be, right? This is the idea of the simulation, that it's some kind of simulation. Like we experience space and this time component because that's how the data is structured for us to interact with. Okay. But the fact that we get these weird, strange phenomena happening where it's information that seems to be keying together, like, the president's deal with Kennedy and Lincoln,
Right.
and all those weird,
Over like long periods of time.
yeah,
between.
and there's just all these correlations, but it's data, it's names, and it's places, and it's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That looks like a resonance between ideas, which is how do you get that in a physical universe?
Yeah. So that makes me think about dreams too, like basically.
Right, dreams is like the defrag.
I'm awake, right? I'm awake right now in the quote unquote real world,
right.
and I'm interacting with things, and over the past.
You're about to go Inception on me? You got a little spinny thing?
Yeah. No, but like throughout my life, I've experienced all of these different things on this planet, and nature and other people and technology, sound, sights, all of that stuff. And then when I dream, I experience a very similar world made up of like sort of the same stuff, but it's all like
jammed together.
Yeah, in weird ways, and there's like the physics is wrong, and
right, and you just completely accept it. Like there's no questioning whatsoever. You're like upside down in a cocktail bar, eating a banana, and then somebody comes over and hands you a flower, and you're like, sweet, I'm gonna go to space. It's like just none of it makes any sense.
Right, but it's still like the way I've thought about it before is that each. Like if you break down everything in the dream, you can
there's archetypes and weird
ultimately come up with these little bits and pieces that are true about the real world.
Right, but
they all come together weird.
Well, and they correlate with the real world through your ideas.
Exactly.
Right? So it's through information, through non-physical. That's what I mean. So how does it connect to the physical world? Unless the physical world is also in some way ruled by this data.
Yeah, I don't know. I've started to think that it's possible that the dream world, and we had kind of discussed this before about death or whatever, but the dream world is actually real. It's a real world and using your idea of it being information, like maybe it's more that we or our consciousness accesses the information that's there, like the Akashic records.
That's right,
or whatever.
the Akashic records. Which,
so we make our own dreams, sort of. It's like it would be similar to
you're sifting through stuff, and
it would be similar to believing what you want to believe. Right.
Yeah.
People have their sort of their dogmatic beliefs or whatever, and that's the way the world is. They know it.
Yeah. Have you ever noticed that stuff in dreams never really turns out the way? Like I've had dreams before. I can't think of any specific examples right now, but I know that I've had dreams where something is some way in the dream that isn't that way in the real world, but that I've thought would be cool if it was that way. But it is this way in the dream, but it's never really that great. It's like, it's not, I don't know, it's never very satisfying or whatever it is. It doesn't, it'll be like, wow, okay, so this thing is true, but it's not that great. I mean, or it doesn't really work out like it seems like it would or whatever. It's very strange.
Maybe that's something about your attitude or something. I don't know.
It's like, wow, this is not that great.
Now, okay, so I've had people talk about flying dreams and all that kind of stuff. Well, I've
No, I have
never quite had the
I don't
solid
soar.
flying dream.
I have ones that's like at most I figure out that somehow I can jump incredibly long distances, and while I'm in the air, I always go farther than I think I was going to, but it's a struggle. There's some idea in my head that I'm like, I'm going to fall if I don't do something right, but I'm not sure what it is that I need to do right.
I have them where I sort of glide sideways, but I can't. It's not like.
I always go to jump over.
Most of the time, it's like, I'm like running. There's like a slope going down. And I'm like, I'm going to jump here. It's like a cliff or whatever. And when I jump, I glide down very slowly, going at a serious angle sideways. And I'm like, oh, sweet. And I keep moving
cool.
forward motion.
No, I jump and I end up way up in the air. I'm like, because I start to realize that like I've got to come back down. And this is actually a jump.
Yeah, I've actually had that too.
Yeah.
I go way, way up there and then I start going back down.
And you're like,
but it's always slow. Like my falling in my dreams is never
right. But the falling is
fast.
slow because of something you're doing in your head, or that's how it seems to me. Like it should be fast. Anyway, that's always mine. Like the jump somehow, like I figure out in the jump, I'm like, okay, this is not how physics would work, but I'm doing something with my mind that's making this happen. And I don't know quite what it is. This is why it's always terrifying, because I'm like way up in the air. I'm like, wow, this is bad. Wait, I don't really know what I'm doing. And what if I stop doing it? And I'm way up here. And then after that, it's just like, shit. And I'm trying to go back down. But, so yeah. I drift down, but I know the whole time I'm drifting down that if I stop doing whatever it is I'm doing, I'm going to be like, So,
have you ever died in your dreams?
Yeah, I got thrown off of a balcony by Matt Stone.
What?
We were partying in this hotel, and it was like a super high rise in the middle of a downtown somewhere. So we were like we were a ridiculous number of floors up, and there were 2 balconies, and somehow they were like sticking out of the external part of the hotel, right? So we could look down to the street way down there, and there were 2 of them. One was a shorter one above this way bigger one below it. And I was up on the higher one, and I went to just kind of sort of jump down to the one below it, and Matt shoved me right when I jumped, and I missed the lower balcony. Like I went past the railing, I was like, and I just turned back and looked, I was like, fuck you, man. And he was like looking at me like, oh, fuck. And then I just fell. It was a long way. And when I hit the ground, whap, I was somewhere else.
Huh.
Like I was sitting at dinner somewhere. I was like, well, at least this won't hurt. And then I'm eating. I'm like, wow, this is heaven, this dinner? No, it wasn't heaven.
I had one that I can remember where I died, but it's like I came out of my body, and saw my dead body.
Okay, yeah, see, that didn't happen. Like there was nothing left of me.
I was like, I'm dead. And then I was like cruising around. That sort of was like a flying dream, but I wasn't really flying. I was a spirit just like.
So you had a weird like a near-death experience, out-of-body experience, lucid dream thing all at once.
It wasn't really lucid.
Okay, you weren't lucid.
No,
but you had an out-of-body. You had an OBE plus an NDE,
and it was from falling. So I fell a long way, and it was real slow. But when I hit the bottom, I died.
I hope.
And then I just like came out of my body and saw it there, and I was like,
I would love to die by falling. That's like the least.
Die by falling.
Yeah, like from a great height though. You're just like, and it's there's nothing. I imagine that when you impact, you can't feel anything, of course.
Yeah.
It would just be like, it would be like a bright white light, and you're like, hi, Dad, or whatever, Grandpa. But I have a question about dreams for anybody who's listening. Have any of you ever used your cell phone in your dream?
I've been asking people that question too, and I have not so far gotten.
Right. I've asked this question all over the internet too. It's like, I realize like, for me, this is how it works. Like if I move to a new place or I get a new job or whatever, or meet new people or whatever, eventually after, a couple of weeks, maybe a month or 2 or whatever, those things begin to incorporate into the dreams. Like,
right.
I'll see elements of my job or these people or whatever.
I had dreams of my house where I lived before, and then
I still have dreams
of my new house.
Yeah, I still have dreams of the old house, and
I have a dream in my old car. I have dreams of my new car.
Somehow you're like in your old car, but at your new house, in the place where you lived when you had the old car. But yeah.
Right, or you get a new car, and then you have a dream when you're in the new car. And
but you're at your old house.
I also had dreams about being in machines, and the machines are freaking badass. Like I was in a backhoe. I know I'm changing the subject.
No, it's great because that's part of it, really.
I was in this backhoe, and I was doing workout.
But you were operating it.
I was operating the backhoe, and I was doing workout over this cliff, and the outriggers and the
walkers?
feet. Yeah, dude. And I just started going out off the edge of this cliff and doing all this crazy stuff. It was badass. It was doing, and I woke up from it like, man, that was freaking kick-ass. Yeah, the way it worked.
Yeah. So that's part of it, because I eventually realized, like, I use computers, first of all the time. And then, of course, now, modern day, we all have mobiles, we have smartphones, and constantly using them or accessing them.
Right.
I've never even seen one in my dream. I can't remember if I've seen a computer, and I don't think so. But I definitely have not ever used a computer in my dream. And now, some people will be like, well, that's because you can't read, But I don't know if that's true, because I've definitely had books, and I don't know if I've been holding them. I don't know if I've ever been reading them, but like, I don't know about that. But the point is that how is this possible that these devices, is it because of, like, okay.
I don't know.
I want
to talk about it, but we got the end of this segment. We're going to come back.
Oh, that's
We're
right.
going to get into this real deep, because this is great.
Yes.
And I think I know the answer.
Oh, wow.
It has to do with snakes.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, where we are coming to you live, not really, from our 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science. And we are discussing a whole bunch of stuff that we completely don't understand. So we were talking about in some ways, the universe somehow being informed by information that is non-physical. And we were in the context of dreams, we were talking about this too. And so I started to ask, and this is a bit of a tangent on that, but why is it that and I have not, and I've asked a lot of people online, and Kyle's asked people too, no one uses their phones or any kind of, okay, let me put it this way. As far as I can tell, the highest technology I've ever used in dreams are vehicles and buildings. Okay? I have interacted with structures of all kinds, very high-tech ones, skyscrapers and shit. Even a space station one time, I think. And then vehicles. I've operated cars. Kyle was just talking about running a backhoe that was crazy. You could cling to a cliff.
Not things that work off of like
nothing
coded.
digital.
Yeah, nothing digital. Like
coded. I've never had a GPS.
I think of it in terms of coded.
I wonder if it's because these things were operated on the quantum level in some way. They're running off of electrons doing, the electrons are going through pathway switches and stuff. I don't know. I just think it's
that's
weird.
An interesting way, yeah.
Like, how do we not even see our phones? Like, I don't even ever see it as an object that, like where I'm like, there's my phone, but I don't grab it. They are absent, right? Like I never go anywhere without it. And yet in my dreams, I don't even have it and I don't even think about it. I've actually never used a phone, like a landline. Have you ever picked up a landline in your dream and called somebody? Right? There's something.
Remember.
Communication doesn't seem to have no radio. Anyway, I'm sure there's other things that people will think of, but like it started with me with the cell phone. I just realized like I've never even seen this object in my dreams, and I have it with me all the time, every day. I interact with it.
Right. So when pagers first came out, right?
Right.
I had a pager, and I had it with me all the time, and I used it all the time. I never had a dream about my pager.
Right. Which
is
weird.
And then we get the cell phone. I'm like, yes, this is like the most kick-ass thing I've ever had. I got my own phone, cruising around,
walking around. I could call anybody anytime I want.
Not in any of my dreams.
Never. Yeah.
But while I had that phone, I ended up getting a new car. The new car shows up in the dream.
Right. Within weeks. Yeah. And you'll be driving around your new car, but not having your pager or your phone.
Right. And then smartphones, like the more like our society has moved towards like everybody's using their phone all the time.
Right. And it's also a camera, and it's also a recorder, and it's also a calendar. And, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be an interesting question too. People used to use cameras with film.
Right.
And-
I've never used any kind of camera or anything like that. That's what I'm saying. I've used vehicles and architecture.
Well, I mean, a question to people like, did you use a camera,
Like an
like
old
an
school
old
film camera?
in your dream, but you don't use
Some
your
kind
cell
of
phone
mechanical
camera in
device.
your
Yeah,
dream?
yeah.
Of course, there are people that are like, they're taking pictures of their phones all the time. They might, I don't know.
What? I'm just saying. I've asked a lot of people online. I've posted threads on Reddit about it, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, I've never even seen my phone in my dream." You know, like, and it's always like a realization to it. Like I've had IT guys be like, "Dude, I work, 8 hours a day with computers, and I've done this my entire life, and I've never even seen a computer in any of my dreams." Now that I think about it, it's like, so there's something there. I think there's something there, and this is like I'm interested in these kinds of things because, to me, it feels like this question. Behind this question somewhere is some structure, some real fundamental structure that we could get a look at. Like, in other words, like behind this question is some fundamental structure of how things work, right? Our minds and the universe and stuff. Like, there's something going on here that's weird. That if we could figure out.
So you brought up this idea that people can't read in their dreams,
Right? And I don't know this for sure.
But I've heard that before.
Yeah, it's like the text is all gibberish.
So
and it changes every time you look at it.
So reading, like we've talked about language before, and alphabets
Babble,
and the letters, right? The letters are all symbols, each one a symbol meaning many layers of things,
right?
Over time by different civilizations, and and then you start combining the letters together to make a more specific concept,
Right?
And then you start combining the combinations of letters together to even further define very extremely specific concepts.
Right.
And if people can't read in their dreams, I feel like that's related to not using these technological things that are all based on code.
Right. Okay.
You see what I'm getting at?
Because I could see people have told me like, well, you don't use computers because there's a screen with text on it and you can't read.
No.
Or you can't use your phone because it's all text interaction.
Yeah, but that'd be different. Like you said, for example, there was a spaceship, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, in the spaceship, you're like, computer, take me to the Centauri system.
It was all levers and shit.
Exactly. My point is that so in the spaceship in your dream, you're using levers, which are mechanical things. There's no code.
Right, you're saying that there's no programming
using symbols and concept. Yeah, software. Okay, so have you ever played a video game in your dream?
No, but have you ever used an actual old school landline rotary dial phone, which doesn't have any software? Like, we need, and you're like, hello, and call somebody. Like, I've never even seen a phone. I can't
remember if I've used.
I've heard phones ringing in my dreams, but that's because they're ringing in the real world and it's trying to wake me up, and I can never figure out. And I always think it's an alarm in the dreams. Never think it's a phone.
Yeah, that is one thing that is really weird too. Just like my alarm's going off. Meh, meh,
yeah,
meh.
And in the dream you're like, what the fuck is that sound?
Yeah.
Like you find it, you're
doing all this
burying it,
crazy shit.
Yeah, trying to make it shut up, and it's just like no matter what you do, it's the same volume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm the connection I'm drawing here possibly is that there's something involved in the symbols.
Even when you can't see them.
Yeah.
I was thinking, okay, because the symbols are informing quantum stuff.
Right. But if our consciousness is on the quantum level,
right,
as well, like what I'm trying to say is like the screen, anything on the display on the screen is the product of code, right? It's it wouldn't be there without these symbols, right. Or whatever, the software. So like, that's why I was thinking the camera idea you might find people, and
they've used a mechanical old school film camera.
They've used the camera, or they've used the flashlight on their phone, which people use the flashlights on their phone. So they're walking through the woods in their dream at night and they're using the flashlight.
Yeah.
But that's a light.
I've used flashlights, but it's never been my phone.
Right, but I use
I
headlamps. I haven't actually had one of my headlamps. It's probably because they're LEDs.
That's right, and they have a digital controller that strobes it.
It's very interesting. I don't know.
So it could be the symbols behind the firmware, the
Like
software,
the software
whatever.
is what I'm thinking.
It could be, and that would maybe ties into the Babel effect, like somehow.
This is why there's never a check engine light in my car when I'm driving in my
That's
dream.
right. There's no check engine light, period. That car does not have a computer. That's right. You open it up, and you're like, wait a minute, this is a 2005. How does it not have a computer at all? But you wouldn't even know about computers in your dreams because you don't, right? But to me, I keep going back to the landline phone. There's no software there. Like that phone, that communications device can operate without any kind of. I mean, there are little circuits, but there's no software.
Right.
And yet, I've never even seen one in my dreams. Now, and that's a harder question to ask because most people are like,
don't recall.
I'm not really sure what like a landline looks like. Like the younger people. I'm like, with the little coily cord and shit. No, they've never seen one. But older people, I've had older people respond like, yeah, I've never. Like there's in my old house there was a phone that hung on the wall right next to the door. And the cord was always getting in the way. And like every time I went out the door, the fucking cord was in the way. And yet in my dreams, never had that problem because the phone wasn't there.
Why do you think that is? I mean, have you asked people if they've seen phones?
That's what I'm saying.
Like
this is what a guy was telling me this, that he had a phone that was next to and he was always getting tangled with it when he was going out the door. And yet he was realizing now that never happened in his dream. Like when he was in that house in his dreams and he went out that door, he never had this problem that he always had during waking hours where he was getting tangled up with the fucking cord. That would like flip out the door when he opened it,
So what do you think? Like you're tying in old school landline phones to this.
It's some kind of communication device. I don't know. I mean, they do connect to large systems. Maybe that's what it is. Like they're little. You could view them as like remote pieces of something that probably does have software. Except that the oldest versions of phone systems didn't have any software. They were just switchboards with somebody operating the switchboard. But I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like I thought for a while that it had to do with text, but then I was like, wait, that isn't quite right because like why don't I ever see the phone? Just like the device. I never even see it as an object.
Okay, so here's another thing.
And then I realized that it doesn't seem to be that it's digital or whatever because I've never seen a fucking regular phone.
Right. So this is what this is making me think of. When I have conversations in my dreams with people.
Yeah.
I can't really say that they're conversations. I know when I wake up, like the person told me, go find this key in this cave. But I have to sort of make that sentence up because really they just convey the idea to me.
Or the idea is conveyed to you somehow.
But we're talking.
Like you have this idea that there was a conversation.
Yeah, and like there's been everyone that I can think of, like where I'm sitting with somebody talking about stuff, it's always that idea that we're talking about this,
right, but
or we're talking about
actually
that.
have a memory of the actual talking. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So what you were talking about, like the communication, again, like this is
there's something weird going on with the communication.
Right.
Yeah.
There's symbols in that. That's like our words are.
It has to do with words? Mm-mm.
Well, I don't know.
No,
I'm just saying that words again are they're audible symbols. They're
right.
They're sounds that represent things. They're sounds that represent ideas.
Yeah, I can't remember actually talking in any of my dreams.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like I can remember that in the dream I was having a conversation with somebody, or that maybe in the dream I was like yelling at someone. Right? But the words that I'm saying are not really clear. They're not like I said blah blah. And
right,
maybe that does happen, but when you're having a conversation, it's more like you get the gist of the idea.
Right. It's like I remember
talking.
I remember the information that came from a conversation, but I don't remember the conversation, and I don't ever remember talking to somebody.
Right.
Yeah. I got what you're saying. Yeah.
So
I'm
I'm
like,
wondering
this guy told me blah blah blah, but really what happened is you remember information that he conveyed to you at some point that you don't remember.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's another scenario that I recall in one of my dreams where like I have basically a conversation with someone and then they go and have a conversation about that with someone else. That person that they have it with is very far away.
That you're aware this is happening.
But I'm aware it's happening and I see it take place.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I'm still there with the person that we just had the conversation. And it's like, so they go and they have the conversation with this other thing. Then they're right back in front of me. And they're saying something else that was based on what they said.
Right. You have you have a...
So it's like, I saw that happened. but it never really took place. Like I didn't have to sit there and wait while they left and did all this other stuff.
But there's just this, but it nevertheless occurs in some way, because you're interacting with pure information.
That's what I'm trying to get at, right? So there's something like I guess I could say in my dreams, everybody's telepathic in some way. Like even though we might be sitting next to each other and
or you're not
blah, blah,
telepathic,
blah.
but you are just directly connected to some like Akashic Records deal, and you're all interacting with each other through that, and it's nonverbal.
Right.
Babbleless.
Babbleless.
That's right. Because babble is what? It's talking.
Oh, babbleless.
Yeah.
Babble-less.
Babble-less. Yeah.
Without babble.
Yeah. Lacking babble. So there's no blah, 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 you know? There's just, bam, you have the ideas.
Yeah, and then those ideas are extremely hard to convey once you wake up.
That's why you're like, man, this dream was badass. It was like,
Yeah, that's a lame dream, man. No, it's real cool.
It was real cool.
I hate that, man. Like I'll have some
and then it was
freaking
red.
awesome dream or some dream that'll like freak me out. I'll be so freaked out, and then I wake up and I tell it, and it's dumb.
It's dumb, and you can tell it's dumb while you're telling it.
Yeah.
But you don't know. But you always learn as you're telling it. You're like, wow, this is dumb.
What is that?
I was actually using that as a comparison to experience. Like there was somebody was saying, you know, that they had some kind of paranormal experience, right? So they had seen something. I can't remember what it was exactly. It doesn't matter. Not specific. So like somebody sees a UFO, or they see like a cryptid in the woods, or a ghost. Okay, and then if they come out of that experience with pictures or some kind of recording or whatever, people call that quote unquote evidence, right? But that evidence is not for them. No. They have their memory and the realization, the actualization of the experience itself. They don't need that fucking picture. They didn't take that picture to be like, I saw this thing and look at it. You know, no, because they experienced it viscerally. They were there. That picture or the recording or the audio or the video or whatever is for everyone else.
Right.
Right. And this is part of the reason why a lot of times people forget to do it, because they're having this experience, and a lot of times they're so, you know, powerful that you're just interacting with it, and you don't think of everyone else and what they're going to say, when and yet when you go to the Grand Canyon and you're standing in front of the Grand Canyon, you're just like, holy shit, this is badass. And then you take a picture and you try to show that picture to somebody, and you're looking at the picture and you're like, yeah, it doesn't really kind of,
you can't really tell, but check it out.
But yeah, so so you show that picture of the Grand Canyon to somebody and they're like, wow, that's pretty cool. But that picture cannot convey to them what you felt standing there in front of the thing. Right? You're aware that this picture is a pale, poor, faded imitation of something that is like just fucking awe-inspiring, and that when you show it to somebody, they might be like, oh, cool, but they are not going to feel what you felt experiencing it. So paranormal experiences are the same way. So I take a fuzzy picture of a fucking ghost or whatever, and I show it to you, and you're like, yeah, man, I'm not really sure, because you weren't there, right?
Right.
But so people thinking that this stuff is evidence is just like, it's not. That's not what it is. It isn't evidence of anything. So going back to the person with the paranormal experience, there was a guy who was just like, and the person had taken some photos and they were fuzzy, just like all paranormal pictures are. They're just kind of like you look at it and you're like, I don't really know what that is. And this dude was script-harding it, basically, just like, yeah, so that's terrible evidence, blah blah blah. And I was like, dude, like, did you have a dream last night? I say bullshit. Picture it didn't happen. Show me the picture of your dream. Right? And he was like, well, that's not fair. You can't take pictures of your dream. I'm like, okay, have you ever sneezed before? When was the last time? Do you remember the last time you sneezed? I say, bullshit. There's no such thing as a sneeze. Give me a picture of it.
Yeah.
But he's sitting there having no picture of his fucking sneeze and no way to prove it to me. But he remembers, like the violent fucking sneeze happening to him. And of course, anybody that is in the middle of a violent sneeze trying to take a picture of it is going to get a blurry piece of shit crap photo. You can't do, and yet there they are, like trying to convince me, a sneeze scriptard that like, no, this really happens because they experienced it. And I'm like, bullshit, I've never sneezed before. I've never seen anybody sneeze before. And your pictures are all fuzzy crap,
Yeah.
So it's like, dreams are like an excellent example of something that you experience, and they can be powerful. Like you wake up from a nightmare and you're like, and you try to tell somebody about it and it's just dumb, right?
Yeah.
And yet you remember the experience and you're still like terrified by it. But even while you're trying to convey it to somebody, you're like, wow, this sounds really stupid.
Yeah. That's one thing I've learned over the years is a lot of my dreams that are extremely powerful, I will not attempt to tell anyone because they were all image related.
Right.
And I'll know that, like, I cannot convey.
And not just image, but there's like concepts that
but still, I'm just saying that there will be images and say scenery and stuff in the dream. There's no way. It's like telling somebody about the Grand Canyon with no pictures. Right. Like it's huge.
It's a crack in the
You can't.
There's dirt.
They have to experience it. In order to really get it.
Right. The name is the the Grand Canyon.
Yeah. So I've written
very, very large.
I've written my dreams down for myself.
Right.
So that I don't forget them. And then I'll go back and read them again, and the images and the stuff that was in it will come back, and I'm like, man.
Right.
You know.
But you reading that stuff you wrote down actually recalls the actual memories, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Whereas when I read it, I'm aware that happens and I'm reading it, but that doesn't happen to me.
Right.
So I know that my level of understanding is like shallow, right?
Right.
And yet I know when you read it, like you read these short sentences and all this stuff happens. And that's what I'm saying about like photos of, if you took photos of the Grand Canyon, you take them for other people. And yet way later when you don't really remember it, you could look at those photos and then bam, the whole experience of you standing there will come back. Unlike it won't do that to somebody who hasn't been there.
Right.
And that's what I guess was just my tangent there was basically just saying like all of these things, but especially the trying to describe a dream to somebody. Like I love using that example of like when people are like, oh yeah, your stupid picture of paranormal blah 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 doesn't convince anybody. I'm like, yeah. Have you ever been able to convince somebody that your scary dream was scary? No, buddy. It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't mean it wasn't scary. It just means that it's really hard to convey when you didn't experience it.
Yep.
That thing is blocking the clock, so I can't tell what the numbers are.
Oh yeah. Go away, stupid thing. Oh, go away.
Stupid thing, go away. All right.
So this is a little off topic here, but I write my dreams down, not all of them, but I have a book where
it's a dream journal, yeah. Which I wish I could do it, but when I wake up, I'm like, nah.
Well, I don't write them all down by any means. Like there's only some chosen ones in there that I'm like, I have to write this down.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, years and years later, going back and reading through the dream journal, that there were, when I'm reading a dream that I could have totally forgotten.
Yeah.
There will be parts that I didn't write down.
That you recall.
Elements of the dream that I did not write down.
Right.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't want to put that in the dream. In what I wrote down because it was weird or it was just off something.
But now you understand it, yeah.
Or not that I understand it, but that like, wait a minute, why did I do that? Like I wanted the dream to be something that it wasn't. Like I didn't. So it was like I wasn't even being honest with myself about what I really wanted to be in this thing.
You're like, I need a prophetic dream from divinity, and then
but
you get one. You're like editing it. So.
Yeah. And it was like I'm not sure if I knowingly edited it, but I would leave it out because I would think, it's not important. But later I realized like I actually didn't like that. Like I did not like that aspect of it. So I didn't put it in there. So yeah, it wasn't important. And I learned something about myself. Like I'm capable of doing this.
Of editing reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And so later I'm like, I got to go put like these notes in there. Like there was this other aspect, of the dream.
But it's fascinating that you read the text you did write, and nevertheless this unimportant thing comes back to you, and you're like, wait a minute. So in other words, it didn't matter that you didn't record it in words because you actually did record it in words. You see what I'm saying? Because your words are just shorthand for the actual real dream.
Right, but there's a specific example that I'm thinking of right now where I intentionally left this one part out because I thought it was like stupid, or it didn't make sense.
And yet, nevertheless, when you read it years and years later,
you remember it.
So in other words, like you didn't actually need to write it down. You see what I'm saying? You encoded it in the.
I agree with that, but the point is that I didn't write it down because you were like, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And so I realized that about myself. Like that's crazy that I
Right.
would do that.
Yeah.
When I was trying to remember everything about the dream and record it on purpose.
Yeah.
And I left this out. So like,
Right. So
I don't know.
yeah, that's cool. I guess what the point I'm making is like maybe the fact that like you recalled it nevertheless, right? In other words, what I'm saying is like maybe you could record dreams with just a few concepts, and then you read those, and bam, the whole thing comes back to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's some of them
Maybe
in
not.
there that I've read that I'm like, I do not
remember
remember
having that
this
dream.
at all. Crazy.
Well, it's
one.
probably one from the what is it? The Horn Gate. What are the two gates that dreams come from that the Greeks had?
Oh yeah, the ivory.
Yeah, ivory and
Yeah, and the horn.
yeah
or something.
Well, ivory is horn, isn't it?
Yeah, tusk.
Is it like gold and ivory, or is it silver? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but there were two gates, and one of them was like the dream gate was those dreams were badass and prophetic, and then the other ones were just like the ones where you're eating a banana upside down at a cocktail bar or whatever.
So there's this this thing that I've been trying recently for some reason, and I don't know if I talked about this already. Maybe. No, I don't think so. But when I've been going to sleep recently, I've been doing this thing, and I don't know why I thought of it or whatever, but when I start going to sleep and I close my eyes, there will be like these images that I start seeing or whatever.
Yeah.
And most of the time, or what I've been doing before this, is just kind of like when stuff's going around in my mind, I'm thinking about stuff, and I'm not really necessarily paying attention to the images, or I'm just trying to think like, go to sleep.
Yeah.
You know, tired,
Yeah,
going to sleep.
now. Gotta go to work. Yeah.
But no matter what I do, like even when I'm doing that, there's like this other level of thought going on, and there's situations and occurrences happening,
Yeah.
and there's images and stuff. And recently I'm like, why am I trying to ignore that stuff?
Just distracting. You're trying to go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So I started paying attention to them and just like, I'm going to let
Yeah,
the
instead of thinking
images
about all this bullshit,
be,
I'm gonna
and I'm
like-
going to like focus on these
watch
images and
this
focus on
slideshow.
this stuff. Yeah. And it's weird. Like
When
I-
you start watching it, it does weird shit.
right. But I've also been falling asleep. I feel like quicker. Like
Yeah.
it's like I would go to bed before and lay there for a long period of time before I fall
Because
asleep.
you're thinking, right? But when you start watching those, I don't know.
Maybe
I'm
that's
just,
what it is. I don't know.
no. I'm just trying to skirt toward your thing like you do with all of my stuff too.
Yeah.
Give you the-
Good job.
That's right. Yeah.
But no,
It's
I'm
completely normal.
I
Kyle.
got this idea, and I'm not correct yet. My idea is not correct yet, but I got this idea that yet. Okay, that if I do this, if I keep doing this, that I could possibly cultivate like just moving right into the dream stage and perhaps like
Yeah, okay, I see.
remembering what's going on. So
Oh, you mean
I've-
like going in lucid?
I don't know. There's just some ideas that sort of came about with this, that like if I watch these images and pay attention, then I will move into the dream world smoothly and actually have dreams, because I remembered dreams at all.
Oh, I see.
And so
Are you sure? Because like all I have to say is like there's so like a lot of times dreams are just so short-term memory that you don't remember having dreams, but you do.
oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. That I'm not remembering them.
Okay,
And so I have this idea that like if I actually focus on the images instead of ignoring them, that I'll move into the dream state and remember it. But of course, that's not been happening. But I have noticed a change in the way
Have you-
I go to sleep.
Like, why don't you try some of the lucid exercises?
I've done those. They
don't work?
work for me.
You got to find one that works. Like,
Well, this is one that I'm working on. That I don't know if it's a lucid dream exercise, but it's something that I'm intentionally focusing my mind on these images and like letting them play out. And I do know that like one time Laura starts talking to me, and this is shortly after that I started focusing on the images or whatever, and it was like boom, being startled out of sleep, and it was almost instantaneous. It felt like. That like the moment I started focusing on the images and just what was going on, like I just, boom, it took me down. Like,
right.
And
It's a self-hypnotism type of thing.
yeah, maybe so.
Because I mean, like when we were working on that a long time ago, a big part of these self-hypnotism exercises was using that mind screen
right,
to put up images, and usually it would be numbers or
right, and
it'd be like 10.
you'd be controlling the images that
and like you're trying to hold that 10 there as you do the 4 count
Right.
breath, and it's like
Yeah.
You know?
You were to write it on a blackboard. And
Yeah, I
like,
would just put up a glowing 10 and I was like, fucking stay. Fucking stay. And by the time, the fourth breath, it was like barely there. And I'm like, okay, 9.
Yeah.
It's so hard to make those numbers stay.
They make them stay. I would always do it on the blackboard. Like I would draw the number on the blackboard, not with my arm.
See, I couldn't do that because
I would just see the number drawn.
I know. I would draw the 10 and then all these math with the shit would start appearing all around it. I'm like, goddamn blackboards. Like there's too many ideas around blackboards so I just have to have a floating number. And then, and I'm
But
like,
it is hard to make
it's
it
white,
stay.
and like by the time at the end, it's like shifting through colors, and that would be the first thing. It would turn purple. I'm like, God damn it, stay white. It's white. It's like red, green.
So that was another thing that we talked about. Peter Ralston, the martial arts guy and ontology guy last time. He brought up this thing about like trying to make your mind not like no talking.
Right. No. Yeah.
Because there's like sort of this constant dialogue going on in your mind, like
to silence the
words are happening. Like going back to words, like when you're thinking about stuff, people typically think about them, and there's like
there's a stream of consciousness. It's a constant dialogue.
It's like words and stuff going. He's like, try to think about this thing without words.
Yeah. You're like,
yeah. Try so hard. And
he's
just,
like words.
Like, don't have words. Wait. No words. No,
right.
shh,
Stop
saying
having words about words. Yeah.
It's really weird. Like
he's trying to say like directly experience it without the fucking.
So I wonder if going back to the dream thing, like, are the dreams we
some
talked
kind of
about
direct
these
experience because there's no words.
Yeah, well, and we talked about the conversations are not really words.
So basically, to kick Peter Ralston's ass, I gotta be asleep.
Yeah, effortless power. Bro.
That's right.
But yeah,
and people do stuff. I mean, like sleepwalkers have been known to do. Usually, it's some kind of strength thing. Like I remember like our cousin Lane, when he was he was a small boy, like picked up the huge, massive CRT, the big TV in their living room. I like when he was a little boy, he picked it up physically, and I think they said that all he did with it was like he pulled it off the little stand that it was on and like sort of set it on the ground where it was facing up at the ceiling, and he just stood there watching it while it was on the ground. But I mean, he picked up this gigantic TV that he can't pick up in waking life. And there's stuff like that with sleepwalkers that do, or they'll go through locks. Like, how do they get through the door when they don't have the keys or whatever, and yet they're outside? And how do they get out there? Or they go through bolt locks, and you're just like, how did you? And the door is locked again, and you're outside. How did that happen? Or they're just standing right next to you while you're sleeping.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
No, so that kind of brings about like mind over matter. Like there's this there's this concept that you can with your mind make shit happen, but people don't believe it. And then there's the other concept of like the faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains or whatever. Yeah. Whatever faith is, like
whatever mustard seeds
your
are.
Belief. Yeah, nobody's ever seen those.
Yeah.
Tastes good though. But whatever it's like, if you truly believe you can do this thing, then it's possible to you. And
right.
Like in people that are sleepwalking are not. They're in a dream world,
right?
Where stuff is not right physically, and they're doing stuff that is impossible in the real world. They're quote unquote impossible.
Their conscious mind, quote unquote, whatever that is turned off. It's asleep, right? It's their subconscious or whatever that is, like that's doing stuff. The thing that dreams, your subconscious, that thing is egoless, which is why. I think we discussed this briefly in the show before about how like when someone becomes lucid in a dream, if there's some other entity or person there, they'll be like, there you are, right? Like there's something happens when you become lucid where you kind of like wake up. And before that, if I was in your dream looking at you, you would be kind of mindless, I wouldn't be able to interact with you because you're just doing stuff, and there's no way to interact with you. But if you became lucid, you'd be like, start looking around, like, there you are. Right. Yeah. So that the mind that they're using when they're sleepwalking, because they're dreaming or whatever, is the egoless subconscious thing. It's below consciousness, but it is also vast and strange.
Vast and strange.
That's right. It's vast and strange.
And like full of snakes. I have snake dreams, dude. Like tons of snakes. Like if there's a snake in my dream, there's going to be tons
Shitloads
of
of
snakes
them.
after that. Like I'll see one snake and then they're just everywhere. I'm seeing them all over the
not
place,
Indiana
massive
Jones.
ones. I love snakes.
Yeah, snakes are awesome.
But
I don't know if I've ever seen a snake in my dream.
we're going to take another break here.
Snake break.
While Russ thinks about that. Take a snake break.
Pythons, I'm just remembering somehow.
I don't care when I get out of here, and that's a lie that I tell well. Let it fall on closed eyes and deaf ears, just as long as you can tell.
All right, we're back here, Snake Brothers podcast, having conversations about dreams and universes made of information and a bunch of other information that we don't understand and don't really know what's going on. So
Dreams, data, and death.
So I wanted to bring up another topic on the dream, sort of in the dream genre, and that is sleep paralysis.
Oh, yeah.
I know you've looked into that, and
I've had it. Ugh.
yeah, me too. So I wanted to start with, I read somewhere or something about, I'm not really sure if I've got this right, but it's something about how when you're sleeping, the brain produces some type of
Yeah, some chemical
Some
that
chemical
shuts
that-
off your, yeah.
Yeah, that shuts
Your
off your
motor
motor
function.
skills. So we were talking about sleepwalking and all that. So those people that are sleepwalking, something triggers the brain to
Or it fails to turn it off.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
And
Like,
so
like people that kick and punch or whatever in their
Right.
sleep. Yeah.
and I've had that happen, you know.
Yeah.
but,
When
and
you wake
and
up
it's
grabbing
like
something. Yeah.
I can feel it sometimes, like when I'm on the edge of waking up or whatever, when I'm having a dream and I'm trying real hard to do something, and then suddenly my arm moves and
Yeah.
it kind of wakes me up.
Right.
So like I overcome that thing.
And see what, yeah.
But in sleep paralysis, it's like you actually
It's the
become
other way around.
conscious and you still have that turned on where you can't move.
Right. It's like you wake up before that enzyme or whatever it is done, is gone. And so and this is the materialist scientific explanation. I'm not sure that I buy it, because how can you overcome a chemical with your mind?
Well, I don't know if it's an actual chemical.
Yeah,
all I remember is that the brain does something that shuts off your motor skills.
Right. It's a chemical neurotransmitter thing happening.
Neurotransmitter,
It's a neurological deal where basically there's some enzyme or some inhibitor, something is released that basically turns off your cerebral cortex and your motor functions. That's what they say. And then when you wake up before that chemical is gone, used up, whatever, when it stops being secreted or something, if you wake up before that happens, you can't move. And yet every time I've had sleep paralysis, there's this mental battle, and you can overcome it by, you're like, and first of all, you can move your eyes. Like I've always noticed that, like when you wake up, my eyes are free to roam around. I can't twitch my finger in the slightest. I can't turn my head, but I can move my eyes. And of course that makes kind of sense, because you have REM sleep, people's eyes are going all over the place when they're dreaming. So that muscle function is not shut off somehow by this motor enzyme or whatever. But there's the way I've learned, because I've had sleep paralysis so often, I've learned that, like, instead of straining to like try to move, to try to try to get up, I just focus on like my pinky. And if I can make that pinky move the slightest bit, wham, I suddenly come out of it and I can move my whole body, right?
So I don't think that that's like overcoming some type of chemical compound.
I agree.
More than just like turning off whatever that switch is in the brain that's that's stopping your motor skills.
Right.
Motor functions. I mean,
But the way that would work in the brain is by some kind of electrochemical interaction, is what I'm saying. Like,
right. But that could be immediate, is all I'm trying to say. Like immediately when it stops generating that, then you can move again or whatever. I don't know. I don't actually know what it is, so I'm not really.
Yeah, and I don't either. But I always think of like adrenaline, right? You get a massive dose of adrenaline, and it starts immediately, but man, it doesn't turn off. It has to fade out, right? There's a chemical sort of like a residual.
Yeah, but when I had sleep paralysis, there's one time that I can remember having it, and I had adrenaline,
Yeah.
and I couldn't move.
You still can't move. You're
I
like,
was like, oh. And in that time, I was actually at a friend's house, and we were watching a movie or something. There were three of us, and they were both.
And
one
why-
of them,
yeah, why
one
is
of
there
them was
always
in a
an
lazy
entity
boy.
account?
The other one's on the couch, and I'm like, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. So I get up and leave and go into the next room, and then I wake up a little while later, and there's this weird like noise
Buzz.
going on. Yeah. Yes. And it was really loud, and I'm just like, what? I couldn't move my arms and stuff. I was just like stuck. And I start looking around, and one of the guys is just standing there looking down at me and like saying my name, like trying to get me up or whatever. And I'm like, I'm trying to tell him that I can't move, and he's just like trying to talk to me or
It
something.
wasn't him. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When I finally came out of it, like it was almost like I was in the sleep paralysis, and then there was a part where I sort of went back to sleep and then woke up and got out of it. I was out of it.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, but it didn't seem like it took long. It was just like I lost consciousness briefly, and then I was up again. I wake up.
I wonder how long that actually was.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I went back out there, and they were both sitting there watching the movie, and I was like, well, hey, told the one guy, like, what were you doing?
What were you
And like, what did you want? And he was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm like, you were in there trying to get me up. I couldn't move. And he was like, no, I have not left this seat.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, exactly. What was that? And I'd never heard of sleep paralysis before, so I didn't know.
Right. I think that every person who encounters sleep paralysis has never heard of it before they have it. Because that's what it always is. The first time is like, I mean, like, I've never met some. I'm sure there are people out there that have heard of sleep paralysis, and then they have it. They're like,
Yeah.
wow, I recognize this.
If you haven't
And then
had it yet,
Yeah.
you're a lucky guy because you're hearing, or a girl because you're hearing it.
Yeah. But it's like I had it too, and I was I don't know, I was like in my early 20s or whatever. So I went my entire life before that never having it. And I was it was the same deal. I was not sleeping in my house. I was crashed out at a friend's apartment, and like he had a big apartment and he lived there by himself. So there was actually a spare bedroom that was just unoccupied, and I slept on the floor in there. I just had a sleeping bag. So whenever I stay over there late, I just throw a sleeping bag down there and pass out in that room. So I went to bed, and I'm like laying, and I wake up and I cannot move, and I'm in this little tiny apartment room, and the door's shut and it's dark in there, but it sounds like there's a fucking party going on in his apartment. I hear all these voices, and I remember thinking that it was. I was like, is he having like a seance? Because it was so, there was like wailing, and it was really strange. I was like, what is going on out there? I thought he's got people over, and maybe they're watching a movie or whatever. But it was really weird, and there was just like you said, there was an eerie feeling, and then the whole. I experienced the buzzing as a sensation. Like I don't. Whenever I think of it, I know that it's a noise, but I always feel it more like I'm grabbing an electrical wire. It's
Yeah,
like
that kinda sounds right.
Right. It's like a sensation, but
Maybe that's the thing that's paralyzing you.
right. What bothers me about sleep paralysis is why is there always like an entity? Why is there always something else involved?
Yeah,
in it?
I know that is weird.
So everybody that has it, like sometimes it's called old hag syndrome, and it's because people. One of the most common experiences with sleep paralysis is you wake up and it feels like there's something sitting on you or pushing you down or like holding you down. That's what I've never I recognize the paralysis as being a paralysis, like the whole body feels impossibly heavy, like you
Right.
But some people interpret that as being held down somehow, or and I mean you can see there's old paintings, like, and it's ubiquitous enough to where art, like famous artists painted it, and so you'll see the guy's laying on the bed and his arms are on, and he's like, his eyes are open and he looks terrified, and there's this like demon thing sitting on his chest, right? And it's like it's called old hag syndrome. Like people experience some ancient withered lady physically holding them down, and they'll see her, right? And she'll get right up in their face. Now you imagine that if you can't move, and she like puts her face right up next to yours, and she's just like, and like she's holding you down. Like that would be terrifying. Now I've never had that. What always happens to me, and I hate this, like I'm in some position where I can't fucking see anything, right? I'm like laying on my side almost all the way over on my stomach or whatever. So when I open my eyes, like one eye's buried in the pillow. and the other one is like looking down at the pillow. And if I look all the way right, I can see part of the wall or whatever, and there's always something right behind
Your field of view or whatever.
Yeah, and I can feel it looming there. I don't know what it is, but it's just like, there's something dark, and it's the reason I can't move. And this is always something that I know during the sleep paralysis, that this is not about science and the brain, whatever. I can't move because that thing is doing something. That this is always what happens when I have it. And so I've learned to ignore that presence, whatever it is. Because I like when I was first having it, I would spend a shitload of time being terrified and then trying to just run or whatever. And you can't move it's impossible to move your whole body. I'm like, I want to run. I'm like, but if you focus everything on like your pinky and you're just like, okay, as soon as it twitches, wham, it's like it unlocks it, right?
So that I do now remember that I was able to move my arm. It was extremely heavy, right? And I was trying to like signal to the guy or something, and I moved my arm enough to where it fell off the side of the bed, but that I couldn't. So it didn't get me out of it. I'm like, and it just. I'm like, oh no.
Okay.
My arm fell.
See, for me, like all I have to do is move. I dropped my arm. For me, as soon as I move something like consciously, in other words, I move it on purpose, it just seems to unlock, and then everything stops. Like the buzzing stops. I sit up. The sensation of terror is gone. The dark presence is gone. But the thing that actually started happening to me, not lately, but more recently or whatever, is that all that happens, right? And I sit up and I'm like, whew, but then I can feel something dragging me back. It's really strange. Like I'll sit up and I'm like, oh, and then there's just like this incredible fatigue, and I just want to be like, and just like drop back down. I can feel it. It's almost like I'm sinking into the bed. I and I just pass back out, and then it happens again. I wake up back in the sleep paralysis. So I've had to learn to I have to get up and like walk, move around, do something or whatever. Because like if I stay in the bed, like I get up and I'm all adrenaline. And I'm like, oh my god, my heart's beating really fast. But then something grabs me, just like, and I'm like, ugh. I'm like, no, and I have to get out of the bed. So
what do you think? Like the presence of another being. Like what do you think that might be? Like what's
I don't know.
possible?
I don't know why it feels dark either. It's like it feels evil.
For me, the presence was a friend of mine, and
yet
my memory of what he looked like was sort of sinister, but he wasn't doing anything bad.
Right.
And I was associating all the negativity with like my situation. I'm trying to like communicate with this thing, like help me,
right.
Like I'm stuck and all this kind of stuff.
That's what I meant to say. That my first experience, it was the same sort of thing. I could tell that my friend was out there in the apartment, and I wanted to call out to him because I'm like laying here on the floor and I can't move, and I have no idea why. I'm like, something's fucking wrong,
Yeah, me too.
I'm fucking paralyzed. I'm like laying here on the floor and I'm like, and I can't say anything. And I did kind of like you. I passed back out, and then when I woke up, I could get. I woke up, and this is what was like. I woke up and I sat up, and I'm like, then I remembered.
Yeah, and that's freaked
I'm like,
you out. Yeah,
what the fuck? And then I go out into the apartment, and it's just him, and I'm like, what? Where's the seance? Like, what the fuck? And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, what? You having a party or something? What time is it? He's like, dude, you went to bed like 20 minutes ago, and there was no party. So I told him what happened, and he was just like, all right, man. And he just went, like he just could not process any of it. He just like, it was John Anderson.
Oh yeah.
He's just like, all right, bro.
Okay, buddy.
Yeah. Okay, buddy. Yeah. And it actually happened to me many times at his apartment. Like this is why for a while I was wondering if there was something there that had latched on. You know what I'm saying? Because it was like, I'd never had anything like this before ever. And I'd stayed at many people's houses. I never had any sleep paralysis. And then I stay at this apartment and whap. Like I get it multiple times there, and I've had it ever since. It's like I contracted it there, right? Something that whatever this dark presence is, like latched onto me there. The old hag, whatever it is, whatever this thing is. So this is the thing. Like
for me, I had it that one time, and I've had The only thing I can remember even close to that is just being sort of on the verge of waking up from a dream where I can start to feel my body, but I can't move. But it's
Yeah.
always like I end up waking up and then I can move or whatever.
For me, that's always like I can't move, but it's just really because I kind of like don't want to. You know, it's like I think I'm like I could move, but it'd be really hard.
Yeah.
I just kinda, like, don't want
or
to.
it's this sort of the other way around where I'm having the dream, like I was saying before, and I'm really trying to do something in my dream, and my arm like sluggishly moves.
That's
barely,
weird when it bleeds
and that'll
over.
wake me up.
Like you're having a fight or whatever, and you're like, yeah, you do some amazing move, but it's weak because you kind of like have no strength behind anything.
Yeah, I cannot punch in my dreams. I'm
like-
the worst puncher.
Yeah, some of my nightmares I can't run because I start floating. Or I become incredibly light. So like all of my running, I'm spending all this time trying to grab onto the ground to get some friction so that I can push off of it. It's just like incredibly annoying. But
I've also had like sort of a fight scenario where the person I'm fighting is moving even slower than me.
Yeah.
Like they're barely
Right.
like if they were walking, I can barely notice that they're walking, but they're in motion, and I'm like climbing on them and beating on them
you're
and doing
beating
all
on
this
them,
stuff.
but it's all weak.
Yeah,
right?
it's like real slow.
yeah, slow and weak. Yeah,
But anyway,
it's like
where were we
fighting
going?
underwater.
You had it once, and then it just started happening to you after that. I've had it once, and it's never really happened again.
Oh, okay.
So-
You've never had it after that,
No, I had it the one time, but I would not sleep in that room anymore
right?
after that.
See, so you connected it to a place, and
Yeah, I was just like, nope, not sleeping in there.
And most people connect it to. In other words, they don't think of it as being like something was wrong with me.
It just freaked me out when I found out the guy was not actually in there. I was like, whoa, then who the fuck? Then
Right.
who was guy?
Yeah, that's right. Well,
And he was kind of a fat guy, and I was just like, then who was fat guy?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So anyway,
So I've kind of gone through a bunch of people's experiences who are purposefully inducing OBEs. Okay, so like the thing that fascinated me about this is when I started to look at out of body experiences. So the way people do it is you go to sleep, and then you become lucid, and then you leave your body. Okay, in other words, you become lucid in your dream. So now you're aware you're dreaming, right? You're like, okay, I'm dreaming. I'm asleep. I'm actually asleep on the bed. And in some sense, and I've experienced this very briefly. I've never been able to maintain lucidity, but people who can do lucid dreaming, they say that like you become aware of your body in the bed, but you're still in the dream world. And there's this kind of like compartmentalization or separation, because they're like, if you start focusing on it too much, you suddenly get out of the dream and you're just the guy in the bed, right? So there's this double awareness of like, I'm actually laying in my bed and I can feel that, but I'm also here in this dream world that I can manipulate however I want. So once they achieve that, the lucidity, and they're aware of being the guy in the bed, but also the dude in the dream, they can sort of use, they describe it as like go towards being the guy in the bed, but then get up without waking up. So you kind of sit up and get out of the bed without waking up. And when you turn around, you're still in the bed. Like, in other words, now you're out of body. Okay. I've had that happen once, and I like when I turned around and saw myself, I was like, "Fuck yes, bam!" And I was back in the bed. You know, like I got excited. Yeah, can't do it. But the buzzing is part of this every time, right? So they that weird the shocking sensation. This is that is part of this process, whatever that is. So I think that sleep paralysis is actually like an involuntary. You're involuntarily going into the OBE thing, but you don't know how to get out of the body.
oh,
Right? The body is the reason why everything feels heavy and you're kind of stuck is because you're supposed to kind of and come out. And like the one time that I did it, it felt like sleep paralysis, but I was not trying to move my body. I was trying to get out of it. And I went, boom, and it was like, it was like, it was sudden, and it was boom, and I was like, whoa, what? And I turned around and I was still in there. I was like, holy shit, wham. And I back, I ruined it. But so, and I haven't had sleep paralysis recently, but I keep thinking like, if I can remember, it's hard to remember because, you wake up from a dream and you're all terrified and shit. But if I can remember this, and if I wake up into sleep paralysis and the buzzing is happening and everything, I can be like, okay, this is actually OBE, and then try to move without moving my body. But this is what I'm saying.
what if the being that's with you?
There's always a guardian.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, what if the being that's there is actually your consciousness that you're not able to be lucid in.
Why am I so fucking sinister?
You're just scared.
I'm looming behind myself like,
You're just afraid of the thing because in your.
But what about the old hag? Like, people experience it as this nasty.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like but see, that's all like your concepts of this thing that you don't actually know or understand. So just an idea that like that thing is actually your full, like, free lucid consciousness.
Okay. So,
but you're not able to get out of the body state.
That's pretty possibly what you're talking about is higher self stuff.
Right? Yeah, and so the other entity is there, and it's sort of like just it's not active.
You're like, what? Okay, other me. Why did you look like the fat guy?
But it's like it's like a sort of knowing or whatever awareness, but you're not.
Maybe
you're separated from
it's
it.
scary because it's
another being that seems to be like on you,
or just because it's vast.
That's what I mean. Like it's you're still stuck in the body state of.
So this is what I was getting at. People, when I went through all these people's experiences with OBEs.
Wait, let me just say this. Sorry. It just occurred to me, like, if you could become consciously aware of the entirety of your subconscious or your entire
self, your higher self.
Yeah. You might be freaked out.
Right.
You might think that thing's sinister.
Anything to that, yeah. What is that giant thing following me around everywhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I am he. You, me.
Yeah. Ignore me. Just pay no attention to the giant entity floating behind you.
Doing it all the time.
Been here your whole life.
Anyway, go ahead.
People who do this or who are able to do it regularly or whatever always say that there's they call it a guardian or whatever, but there's something there when you first come out of your body. It's there. And it manifests in any number of ways, and it's different for the experiencer. Like, one guy experienced it as large glowing spiders on his wall. I mean, the huge ones, like, there's the sizes of dogs and cats. And of course, that's terrifying, right? You like, imagine that you come into the sleep paralysis state, and then you get out of your body, and there are these gigantic glowing spiders on your wall, and they start crawling towards you or whatever. And like, the first time it happened to him, he flipped out and, like, of course, went back into his body and woke up and they weren't there. But then he's like, but maybe they really are still there, and then he couldn't sleep in his bedroom for weeks after that because he's thinking about glowing spiders. But the point is that they're harmless, but they're okay. And I don't know this, but this is the idea that I got. They're harmless, but but their point is to terrify you, because that's the first test.
Okay, so a buddy of mine has a little girl, a daughter, and he was telling me that they were all hanging out in the bedroom, him and his wife and their daughter, and she was just like, "Mom, there's like giant ants like climbing on the wall." She was seeing like these ants, and they're like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, they're on the wall." And then she started freaking out. She's like, "There's one on you! There's one on you!" It was climbing up her leg, and she could like point right at it like it's an ant. Yeah. And they were like, "No, it's okay. There's nothing there," and all this
bullshit.
Stuff. But we talked about it, and he was saying, like, yeah, I was trying to calm her down, like, they're not going to hurt you. It's okay, blah, blah, blah.
Right, don't tell him it's not there. Just be like, yeah.
But, yeah, he may not have said, I can't remember exactly what he said, but we were talking about the possibility that they really were there.
Yeah.
And it was just something that
she can see it.
She can see as a child.
Because she's still partially over there.
Yeah,
That's that. I just
hasn't completely
integrated. That's what I mean.
Denied all.
Well, like what like there's something about, okay, so why can small children see spirits or whatever? It's because
they're closer to that world.
They just
being
came from
completely
there.
In that world than we are.
Right. They haven't fully integrated into the material yet.
Yeah.
So, like, I have to go OBE to see these things or whatever, and so if you become OBE, you basically are a spirit, right? And yet the whole time you're fighting the pull, because you can feel there's a pull, your physical body, and when you read people they're going out and they're exploring vastness of space and they're changing levels and interacting with entities, but the whole time there's this sensation of being a body lying in a bed in some incredible distant place, right? But you're connected to it, and it can be all the way across the universe, but it's also right there.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's what like newborns feel the other way around.
Yeah.
Like they're here, but there's this
some pull.
massive pull, and it takes them years to get over it.
Right. And that's why they're like,
That's just crazy.
yeah. And that's why they can see stuff, right? Because they're, and so like the little
They're
girl,
not really looking with their eyes.
right. So the little, like kids that have imaginary friends, they're not imaginary. I mean, you know, you can watch a child play with something where they're using their imagination, and then you see them interact with something where they're obviously not imagining it, but you know, they're only playing one part of this thing, whereas in the other part where they've got a doll or whatever, they're playing all the parts.
Yeah.
And then there's times when they're just playing one part, but there's obviously other parts being played. You know, like I'm just like, I don't see how people think that's imaginary. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And then of course, you know, like there are imaginary friends that like transcend generations, you know, where like your nephew or whatever starts to have an imaginary friend that is the same name as like one of your siblings had when they were young, and you never said anything about it, and yet he's all of a sudden got this imaginary friend that has the same name and looks the same. And you're just like, but it's imaginary.
Okay, Bill.
He imagined the same thing because genetics or something. Come on. Yeah.
Why do you like our family so much, Bill?
Yeah, the pedal story. Who was that guy that told us that story?
I don't know what you're talking about.
There was a dude in town that told us a story about it. Was the imaginary friend's name was Pedal, but it was it was like had this, you know, it was the name after a flower petal or whatever, but it was gigantic, whatever it was some huge thing, and it was like his mother or his grandmother had it when she was a tiny child, and then all of a sudden his daughter starts talking to a pedal, and he's like, pedal, you know. And then his grandmother flips out when she comes over and hears that the kid has an imaginary, because that was hers, and like she's never said anything to it, you know.
What, you know these people? I don't.
Yeah, it was the like you introduced me to him. He's a big dude. He liked to talk about paranormal stuff. Like he would come over to the grotto and hang out with us. He has the ranch that we were supposed to go out to one time that we haven't been able to get a hold of him to go out.
Oh yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
The pedal story. I've never forgotten it because it was.
Man,
like,
that's wild.
Yeah, imaginary friends are not. So yeah, so it fascinates me, and I talked to Brenner about this, you know, because Brenner is like always on the edge of. I mean, it's like he's lucid dreaming almost all the time, which is why when you wake him up, he's like, whoa, whoa.
Well,
Right?
he used to lucid dream a lot. I don't know if.
But I was like, dude, if you're lucid dreaming, you're halfway to OBE. Like, you just need to take that next step. And when I told him that, he was like, whoa, right? I don't know if he's worked on it or whatever, but I told him that. I was like, so you get that lucidity, and you can, you know, you just got to make the choice now. Like now, instead of like changing the dream and flying around and like, you know, whatever, instead be like, okay, now I want to get into the real world. Like get up without waking up. And you'll feel the same buzzing, weird. The buzzing stops when you pull out of your body. When you know, it's like, and you snap out of it, and that stops. Everything goes smooth. The buzzing is some like frequency activated like disconnection, something happening there, which is
bad connection,
right? Which is interesting too, because the same buzzing is reported in lots of paranormal experiences in the waking. So a UFO experience, like people will say, we were walking through the woods, whatever, everything went quiet, and there was this weird buzzing noise, and then we saw a UFO, we saw Bigfoot, or whatever. So it's like, and this is why you can't get pictures of any of it.
Yeah,
because
that's what I was
actually
gonna say.
happening.
You can't take pictures of that because
right, because you're sort of shifting. You're not having an OBE, but some part of you is shifting over into this altered other. You're sort of like peeking into the spirit realm or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
and that's what the buzzing is you're slipping through the veil. So, and I've never had the Oz factor. Have you ever had it?
I don't know what that is.
The Oz factor, where like everything goes quiet, you feel the buzzing, and then you know whatever Sasquatch walks by on his head or something. Like
no,
the Oz factor is the entire woods going silent, and the buzzing noise. You know, they call that Oz factor because after that, strange shit starts to happen, and like those are the hallmarks of it.
Nope. All the strange shit that ever happened to me just happened.
Yeah, you're like, no, it was not in the spirit realm. It was real. No buzzing sound.
I just didn't have the Oz factor, I guess, or maybe I wasn't paying attention.
I felt buzzing during some of your things, like when you were a kid. some of the stuff you would do, I would feel
Okay, now
otherworldly crap going on. Like when you would go into one of the quote unquote
I
fevers.
don't know. Yeah, I can't say that I remember it being a buzzing thing, but there was always like a very specific sort of environmental something that
Right.
was the same every time I was having like a hallucination as a child or whatever. I would wake up in the middle of the night and there would just be this. Everything was a certain.
Yeah.
There was just this certain environmental.
Right. And you associate it with fevers.
I don't know if it was. No, I'm just saying, not necessarily
Like,
a
because
buzzing
you know, the
or
fever,
a
you can
sound.
tell
or-
you're like, I'm feverish because everything feels gigantic and really small and far away and close.
There was that, but I mean, in terms of like a sound or buzzing or a color, there were environmental factors that were very
Pronounced.
specific
Yeah.
to whenever I was in that state. And so I would know, like the moment if I woke up,
Yeah,
I would just be like, oh yeah, here we go. I better get up and go crawl off somewhere in a weird place and try
Right.
to do something strange.
Well, yeah. And we better take a break because it is time for that. So
All right.
we will come back for the last segment of the show in a bit. Snake Bros. Snakes. Hello and welcome back to Snake Bros Public Radio, where we talk like this until you fall asleep. Every time. It's publicly paid for.
That's a great joke.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a great intro.
Welcome to the Public Podcasting Network.
That's right. Now we go back to our fascinating guest who's going to talk about the sociology of monkeys.
Oh my goodness.
So, I kind of wanted to like completely shift subjects. For some reason, I want to talk about Easter Island.
No.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Hell yeah.
I'm just kidding. Hell yeah.
So can you see one of those guys doing a push-up or a sit-up?
Yeah.
No.
Just one sit up, like the kid from Easter Island. He's like, you know, if you look at those faces and you realize that they have beards, it changes everything.
Why?
Because like they look very strange and alien. They've got these gigantic square jaws, but if you realize that they're just bearded,
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like, look at it and be like, oh, that's a beard. Oh, and then suddenly you can see the face. It's like it changes it completely.
Looks like Daniel Phillips. Oh, Dan.
Yeah. But the aquiline features, like the long nose, and then they have these earlobes that are crazy, right? And then the beard. You see the same thing at Tiwanaku in Peru, or on Peru-Brazil border. The bearded god, the Viracocha, like he's got this beard, and he's got the same sort of like long straight nose, the long earlobes, and he's got this just massive, like biker beard, but it's square and it's curly. You can see that they show you the curlies or whatever, but the thing that bothers me about Easter Island is the conventional timeline. Okay, let's talk about that. And I'll try to put some of this in the show notes if I can find them on my computer. I've got a lot of old sketches from some of the first visitors, from the first European visitors to Easter Island. So this would be in the 1500s, I think, 15 or 1600s when they first found it. I think that's when it was. But anyway, when Europeans first found it, of course, so they would go and they're of course marveling at like all these giant heads all over the island, right? And you're in the middle of nowhere in the Pacific.
I thought they were trying to say that the people who constructed all of them came over there in canoes in the 1500s or before that or something. Just
yeah, so it's very close. Like the idea is that
they did all that in 100
the Islanders,
years.
yes, the Islanders show up and they may have shown up, several centuries before, but if, at some point, about 100 years before Europeans find it, they do all the statue building. And in the process, they cut down all the trees on the island, which is why it doesn't have any trees now.
And then bury all the statues with the scree off the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, of course they did.
Right. So what I'm getting at, is exactly that. I've got all these sketches from various, I guess they called them at the time, they called them antiquarians. There was no archaeologists back then. There were people, they were members of the, they were philosophers. Okay. They were pre-scientists, but they're interested in this stuff. And they would do these really detailed sketches of the island. And if you look at those sketches and then you compare them to like photos now of the island, you can find the same spot and you can find a photo of the same spot because there's signature places where you're like, wow, that's amazing. They would sketch it. And it's the same places people are like, wow, that's amazing. They take a picture now. So you can find almost exactly, and they look exactly the same. Like the heads are tilted the same exact way in the sketch. They're buried up to their chins.
About the same, yeah.
Right. And, you notice that the ones that are tilted and buried, they're tilted because you get the idea that they're tilted because there's been this long, slow mudslide that's been slowly burying them, and it kind of starts to push them over, but it holds them up at the same time.
Right.
So you get this head that's got a crazy, like a 30 or 40 degree tilt.
Like he's leaning at you going, what do you say, guy?
Yeah. Huh? He's like, what's up, guy? You know what I'm saying, guy? So they aren't just heads. Like, most people know this now, but they have complete bodies all the way down to the feet.
Yeah.
So if you can just see to the bottom of the beard, the chin or whatever, that you can see the square head, that's about 1/3 of the entire height of the statue, because below that is and they're kind of the bodies are weird, pudgy, they're sort of like they're almost bowling pin shaped. There's like this weird bowling pin shape and then the square head on the top. But so all that would be buried under the, so that's like, it's 30 or 40 feet of sediment. And because they're just kind of tilted, that it was a slow roll. The sediment it wasn't catastrophic. If it was catastrophic, they'd be under the sediment, buried. It would have knocked them over.
Right, but sketches from the 1600s
right.
Matching photos taken in modern times.
Right, so the idea that all of these statues were put up in the century or two before Europeans found the island. And
that all that sediment came down
within those 100 years, yeah. Because since the photos from the Europeans first finding it or the sketches and the photos now are identical, that means that all of that sediment, they were buried up to their chins in 100 years or so, and then in the 500 years since then, nothing has happened. No sediment has moved at all. That's just...
And they were buried that quickly without knocking them
down,
all over.
And then nothing happened.
Right.
So like 100 years, buried up to their chins, 500 years, nothing.
Yeah.
Even though that supposedly the islanders who were making all the statues, right, because the idea of how they moved them is that they carved them out of the mountain and then they rolled them on tree logs, and in the process cut down every fucking tree on the island.
Right, but they don't have any logs as evidence that they rolled them on tree logs, right?
And there's no trees, but there are no trees on the island, and people are, so they're like, oh yeah, they destroyed the climate of the island. They completely destroyed the ecosystem by cutting down all the trees, and of course now the trees can't grow, and so
when they were done building it, they took all the logs that they'd made and they made rafts and they left.
Right, or the logs fragmented because the heads are too fucking heavy to roll them, right? Yeah. And so they got mad and made bonfires, but. Yeah, so there aren't any trees now. This is true.
Right.
But they blame that on the natives. They're like, yeah, you fucking assholes cut down all the trees to push your heads all over the place. Right? But that's not, you can, what I'm trying to say is you can look at the sketches and modern photos and see that can't be the case. Like, the idea that they were slowly buried really quickly. Yeah. And then nothing happened in the intervening 500 years is just ridiculous. So that opens the question of like what's really going on there. Like, how old are these things? Who really put them up? Because the quote unquote natives, the people that the people that are there that are non-European, they, number one, don't claim to be native, and number two, don't really claim to have built the statues. And when they're asked, it's a kind of famous thing that they say that the statues walked to their positions. But none of them say, we did this, right? well, okay, I should revise that. They do claim to have done some of them, but the ones that they claim to have done, they are made out of a different rock. They're cut out of a kind of a soft, sort of porous volcanic, right? It's cut out of this volcanic stuff that's kind of easy to cut. It's softer than limestone. It's like almost a pumice that's up on the side of the mountain. The old ones are made out of basalt, which is like harder than steel. Okay, so when Robert Schoch went to the island, he noticed that. He was like, okay, so those heads are made of basalt, and then these over here are made of this soft volcanic stone. They have visually they have the same level of erosion of just being in the rain and water and sea spray and stuff like that. But that soft stuff erodes incredibly quickly. Basalt will hold up a mountain and not change, right? It takes a lot to erode basalt. So for the basalt to look as pitted and sort of eroded as this like soft volcanic stuff means that basalt has been there a long, long time.
Yeah.
Okay. And he also noticed that there's one place where most of the statues, there's hundreds of them. Most of them face the caldera. They all, wherever they are on the island, are looking inwards towards the same spot, towards the volcano.
Right.
But there's like 7, I think it's 7, or maybe it's 11 or whatever. But there's a group of them all in a line that face out to sea.
Right.
And they're standing on a platform, so they're not buried, so you can see their full bodies because they're actually lifted up off the ground and they're standing on a stone platform. But if you carefully get some pictures of that platform, and you guys can do this, look it up, and it's easy to find because there's kind of a signature thing. They're all in a row and they're standing on a stone platform. Kind of zoom in and look at that stone platform and really carefully look at both sides of it, and you'll see that one of the big blocks in the platform is a fucking head. It's a basalt. A very old basalt head. It's laid over on its side. So somebody used an even older head to build the platform that these heads are standing on. So that implies that shit's been moved around since they were put in place.
Or like somebody used that to repair the wall or something.
Right. But
that's happened in
how do
Baalbek. There's the whole thing where they're using like column drums.
Yeah.
To repair certain parts of the wall, and they're like, oh, that means.
Yeah. So I guess maybe that's. I think Robert Schoch was implying that to him the structure of the wall looked like you couldn't put that head in there without having the statues off the platform.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right. Because it's not. I mean, it's there's not much so if you pull that head out, the whole thing would start collapsing. So you would have to move the statues on. So the idea is that the platform was built and that head was put in there, and it's a broken one. It's not the whole thing. You can see kind of the brow and the nose laid over on its side. Very, very eroded though. Very, it's all worn.
Is it worn on its side or is it worn from the vertical?
Since it's basalt, you can't tell. It's like the basalt just wears it gets pits in it and stuff, so it just starts to smooth over. But yeah, I don't think there's I don't know because
not like a water erosion pattern, which would be vertical.
Right, but think of Stone Mountain. It has 0 vertical. The water erosion on that kind of rock just sort of kind of pits it and kind of it doesn't wear channels into it. It's too it doesn't, because of the structure. I guess it doesn't work that way. The granite, all the crystals and everything. It just water will run off of it and not cut things in it, but it will eat it away.
Yeah. Right.
So that's what it looks like. It looks very old with that kind of erosion. There's no channels and stuff, but that does imply that people have shifted stuff around, right? You're using a piece of an old head to build a platform to put other heads on, and where did you get those heads? Did you make them or did they come from somewhere else? And some of these have the weird red things on top of them.
Yeah, the hats.
Right, which I can't remember who's first.
They're man buns.
Yeah,
that tie their hair up.
Red hair.
Yeah.
So it's like they're I mean, Viracocha was also redheaded, and a lot of these ancient beings are said to have red curly hair or whatever. So in the Lovelock Cave guys, the ancient giants, or red hairs, and then the long heads that are found in Paracas in Peru, they have their bodies, the remnants, the mummies or whatever. There's still bits of red braids. They had red hair. So
what do you think? I mean,
we were fucking ruled by gingers.
I know the there's some legend or whatever saying that was the burial place of the gods or whatever.
Right. So the island was the like the tomb of the kings or the tomb of the gods or whatever. So each statue is an individual, sort of like the terracotta soldiers. Each one has a representation of a person who used to be a real person, like right. So each one of these heads, and they're not cookie cutter. Like when you look at them, you can see that they have differences. And a lot of times it'll be in some of the endorments, which are really hard to see in photos, but because they're so worn. But they've got belts with buckles and there's shit hanging off the belts and stuff.
Yeah, it's weird how they have that. There's like the belt, and then there's like a pelt that hangs from it, so you can see like the tail.
Right,
and
but it's not a butt flap; it's just a pelt.
Right, it's a pelt hanging down, and they're like, isn't that in Easter Island? There's some of them that have that, or
the Easter Island has it, and Göbekli Tepe has it.
Right.
Yeah,
those pillars, like the guy has the belt, his hands come around the pillar in the same way,
holding.
And there's the pelt that's hanging down.
The hands sort of come around and like kind of grasp the belly just above the belt buckle, and they have the long, weird, they're like elongated, thin fingers. It's very like I don't know. When you look at the Easter Island statues, like look carefully at their bellies, and you'll see their fingers are just really weird looking. And then go look at the Göbekli Tepe T-pillars. And I'll try to put this in the show notes. Like I've got pictures of all this. The T-pillars also are like, anthropic. They represent a person.
Right.
The big ones do anyway. So that if you think of the T shape, the head is kind of the top, and it's like it's weird because it's really stylized. The narrow side is like the forward face, like the face would be on the front narrow edge.
Yeah.
So the big flat parts of the pillar are the sides of the guy. So he's got one arm coming down each side of the T, and then they kind of wrap around the front of the narrow pillar, and you see these long, thin, fucking weird looking fingers.
But they're in the same exact like position, basically.
Yeah. A weird, like
standing
sort of,
with the
holding the belly or whatever, just above this belt buckle. That's the same shape. It's got the H sort of thing. It's a weird H.
Or they have a pelt hanging off of it or something.
Yes, there's a pelt and there's some other tool on the other side. So how is that? Like, how do you have the most remote island in the world in the Pacific connected with like this place on the other side of the planet in Turkey?
Yeah, that's
and they're like the styles, on one they're these humongous like stylized sculptures of people, but they're recognizably people. On the other one, you see they're T's, they're structural things, but then when you get close, you're like, wait, this is a person.
Yeah.
And they have the same hands, the same belts, the same buckle, the same position. Right.
That's just the easiest position to carve someone in, yes.
The beaver explanation.
Yeah. When ancient humans carved people, they carved them in this position.
That's right.
It's easy.
The easiest place to put their hands was on their belly right above their belt. And it was just easier to give them long, weird fingers instead of actually trying to carve real fingers.
And everybody had H belts.
Yes, like seriously, everybody who's anybody had
12,000 years ago.
Right.
That's the other thing, is it
Easter Island is like 1400s, and Göbekli Tepe is like 10,000 BC or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what do you think?
There's a little bit of a time problem there.
What do you think is the deal?
Well, obviously the Easter Island guys were copying the Göbekli Tepe people, right? Somebody from Easter Island had gone
because they took their canoes from Turkey, and went all the way to Easter
and they were when they got there, they're like, hey, I know exactly how to make those hands on that head because I saw this on this T back where I lived. No, it's freaking stupid.
No, but seriously, like, how do you connect the dots? Like,
well, the other dot that connects is Mohenjo-Daro, the Indus Valley civilization, right? So on Easter Island there were, I don't know if there's any remaining, but I think one or two museums have remnants of the wooden things carved with script.
The Rongo.
They call it the Rongo writing, but no one is able to translate it because there's very few pieces of it.
Yeah, that's because they're not looking at it righto.
That's right. You're trying to read it Rongo.
Rongo writing.
Yeah. If you keep calling it that, you're never going to get it right.
Dude, so
Indus Valley, in India / Pakistan, so on the border right there, there's the Indus River comes down. They found there are cities all through there, and these are like incredible. They're very, very ancient, and they're incredibly advanced for their. They've got plumbing that, under water that ran into the streets and shit, and like they had clean water coming in and dirty water going out, and like and the cities are obviously completely pre-planned. They didn't sort of homogeneously. They didn't just sort of grow as needed. They were built as complete, total structures with everything pre-planned and all.
Yeah.
So they're very advanced. They're very, very ancient, and they found lots of artifacts there that have script. And when you look at the Indus Valley script, it looks like a version of the Rongo script, but the Rongo script looks like it's filled out.
Where's the Indus Valley?
In India / Pakistan.
Okay, because there's another writing that's from Turkey that looks like the Rongo writing.
Oh, wow.
That's what I remember. I think it was in Revelation of the Pyramids. Some untranslated writing from Turkey, and the Rongo writing in Easter Island.
That
they look the same, but like one of them looks like outlines around the structure,
and the other one is just the
lines.
Right. The one from Mohenjo-daro is just lines, and then the Rongo stuff is like they're filled out.
Right. So you could like take the Rongo writing, one of the symbols, and put it over the symbol, and it would be like an outline around this.
Right. And it's the characters are mostly, they look like human figures doing various like semaphores.
Shaman guy with his arms and
elbows. It's like they're doing semaphores. Like it's like a sign language. You're just writing it down. Like left.
But
right.
dude, I'm gonna have to look this up
Ninjas.
because if it really is from Turkey, that other one.
That's crazy. Yeah, because that's where Göbekli Tepe is.
Right.
But I'm saying what I think you're remembering is the Mohenjo-daro stuff from India
probably, but
/ Pakistan, because it's Pakistan, right? They were
My phone's dead. Otherwise, I'd be looking it up right now. But anyway, I'm just gonna throw this in there. Like, I ate magic mushrooms one time.
Yeah.
A while back, and when I was on the trip, I noticed this pattern, and eventually noticed that this pattern was in everything that I looked at, and they call that like entoptic patterns or whatever. But
yeah, like it's built into your eyes.
It seemed to me that if I was looking at a material that had, say, like a piece of paper, has very fine fibers, and if you look really closely at the piece of paper, you can notice like you can see the fibers, or you could see sort of a texture.
Yeah, or even like looking at like plaster on the wall.
The plaster on the wall has like a big pattern.
Yeah.
Right. So what I saw on the paper, in the little tiny fibers of the paper, was this tiny, tiny pattern. The fibers matched and lined up all perfectly with this pattern. And then on the wall, where the texture on the wall that was big, the pattern was large, and perfectly repeating, but incredibly complex. But I specifically remember one way of looking at the pattern looked like all these human-like figures.
Right. You see all
that
all
were
these shamans.
Yeah, looking like sort of with their knees out and their elbows out and their hands up and their legs down, stickman style.
Yeah.
But they were in various slightly different positions and in circles and all this kind of stuff.
So this is Rongo.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when I first saw the Rongo writing, I was like, dude, it looks just like that.
And that's Indus Valley.
But not, okay.
But that's a chart. It's not actually an example of the writing. But yeah, there's so many symbols that match right up. But again, this is a chart, so it doesn't look like writing because it's like.
Well, look up the one in Turkey. See if there is one.
But I don't think there is one in Turkey. Can't look up what does not exist. No, there may be an example. Like I know that they found in South America, they found what it's called, the Fuente Magna artifact. It's a bowl, I think, and it has Sumerian-looking, Proto-Sumerian script in it in South America.
I don't even know how to look this up. Oh, well, I'll figure it out later, but...
So the point I was getting at is like you brought up the tombs of the gods. So my idea, how do you have this island that has that has people on it that don't know anything about all the artifacts there. Okay, they don't really know what the meaning of the heads, that the sculptures, the statues. They say that they walked there, but that they really didn't have anything to do with them. Then they have these examples of this script, this Rongo Rongo, and I guess there's an idea that maybe they could read it at first, but every time I read any kind of history about this, there's always like a lot of what would you call it? Like people hating on the Europeans, right? The Europeans showed up with their freaking religions and their freaking rules and their
diseases,
and they didn't like the way these natives were doing stuff, and they didn't like their text, and so like I don't know. So there's always this whole sort of like destruction of culture crap going on with the stories, but the idea is that maybe they could read it, but it was lost because they suppressed it, whatever. I don't think they could ever read it. And that's kind of the idea you get. Like they sort of, I saw this one video where they showed one of the oldest natives on the island, an old woman. They showed her a copy of one of the remaining Rongo Rongo scripts, and she looked at it and she looked away, and then she started singing this song, like some old folklore song. Like that was her answer to that script.
Yeah, what that meant.
Right. And I'm like, so is the song like an esoteric version of what that script says, or is she singing that song because that song is a cultural thing that they've done that has to do with where the script came from and what this whole thing is about, right? Anyway, my idea, what I see is a secret place that was because if you think of it as a tomb, okay, so here's a place that like no archaeologist would call a tomb that is a fucking tomb. It's actually a fucking tomb, right?
Yes, of course.
Right. So this one's not a tomb, but yeah. Thinking about it, they're headstones.
Right.
Right. So there were caretakers.
Who were the caretakers?
The people that are there. Yeah. So like there's this gigantic global spanning civilization. Let's just treat it as being seafaring. They didn't have space crystals or whatever. They just, they were global. They had mapped the globe. They understood stuff about sacred geometry. They were building pyramids everywhere. And they had this island where they buried their elite or their badasses, their scientists, whatever, whoever they were, that they were buried, the people that were chosen to be buried on this island. Well, every graveyard has a caretaker.
Yeah.
Right? To keep it not so like when you go there, it's like it's kind of pastoral and the grass is cut or whatever. Then that civilization,
idea.
Easter Island's in the middle of nowhere. So to the caretakers, they live on this place but they don't have a civilization there. They're like employees. So every couple of months, a ship shows up with a bunch of people. They're either there to visit the grave or they're bringing somebody to bury or whatever, but they've got supplies and then one day the ship stopped coming because a cataclysm happened and that civilization falls. And these people are stuck on this island in the middle of fucking nowhere, and they've been there ever since. And they have all this stuff around them that they start to forget what it means because they don't really have the tools to have a civilization there. There aren't enough of them, and there isn't enough stuff.
Man, that's freaking crazy.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is why I think they put the statues looking out to sea. Because they're waiting, even like generations down, they don't even know what for, but they're waiting for something to come from the ocean. Like there's something supposed to come that hasn't.
So what happened?
Then the Europeans showed up and they were like, "Oh, thank God!" And then a little while later, they're like, "Crap, these aren't the right dudes."
Ask you, yeah.
Just like what happened in South America, it's like these aren't the right people, but somebody shows up and they're waiting for this, and so they've got these,
once again, the promise to return.
Right. But in this case, the promise to return didn't come from gods; it just came from the other people in the civilization, right? So these guys, think of it like this. It's a gas station in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And the gas station has a staff, a couple of employees or whatever, right? And cars come every once in a while, one or two a day, maybe 5 or 6 or whatever, coming across this long desert road in the outback of Australia. And then civilization falls, and these guys are stuck at that fucking gas station, and no cars come. And they have kids, and those kids have kids. and they're all living around this gas station, and sort of it's crumbling, and they're trying to keep it together, and they don't really remember what any of it was for, right? And then eventually, like thousands of years later, civilization builds back up, and somebody shows up, and like there's all this weird crap going on there, but it was just a gas station. They were employees. These are the descendants of the employees that got left there.
So you don't think the whole story about the people that were there actually went across in canoes across the Pacific?
No, I mean I do think that happens, but in this case, it just to me.
So where did they get that idea? They just
because they had to get them there somehow. It's in the middle of the Pacific. It's like the Easter Island is the most distant piece of land from every other piece of land in the world. Right. It's 2,000 miles from everywhere. It's like
so they had to figure out some.
So when you show up and there's people there, and they're primitive or whatever, you think they're primitive, and you believe that there has never been anything advanced in the past, more advanced than you are now. You've got to get primitive people to this island somehow. So you're like, well, it was an accident. They like got into this giant canoe, and then like they got swept out to sea, and then it sucked, and they were all starving and stuff, and then they found an island in the middle of nowhere, and they've been there ever since. Like, it's just. It's a story of necessity, because you've got to have a story of how these people got to this most remote place.
How did they pinpoint? I mean, I know this is probably beating a dead horse, but how did they pinpoint the time that because they're like, oh yeah, they came over there like certain hundreds of years ago at this time. How do they know that, or how did they come up with that?
I mean, there is no.
It's all theory. It's
not even theory, dude. It's like wild speculation, because. I mean, you know, it's the same thing as like what happened at Gunung Padang. Like you've got this mountain, and on the top of it are all these weird, you know, these it's obviously some kind of monumental site made out of the columnar basalt that happens from lava,
right,
hitting ocean water, and there's this weird structure built up there, and they've just assumed that it's 2,000 years old. You know, they're like, well, it's about 2,000 years old, because you know that's how that stuff is. Stuff like that is 2,000 years old. Because that's when people were building stuff like that. Ugh. Now later they went and did some, you know, they went up there and dug a kind of a square pit in the top. They went down a meter or two, and they claimed that they did some carbon dating on whatever organics they found a meter down. And they were like, yeah, so it came out to be 2,000 years old or 2,500 years old or whatever we already thought, right? So they're like, so we were right. And so they left. And then the geologist gets up there and he's like, that's not a fucking mountain. Somebody built this. And then he like does a core sample and gets dates, finds that there's structure all the way down, and gets like 25 to 30,000 years at the bottom of it. So it's like there's merit in their guesses, but they miss almost everything. You see what I'm saying? Like there's merit in the guess of 2,000 years. They're doing that by what do you call it? It's
contextual dating.
Yes, they're contextually dating. They're like, okay, so there's this kind of monumental looking crap, and it's, you know, and because of other stuff around here that we've also dated it or whatever, we know that it's about from this period and was done probably by this culture who kind of did this kind of stuff, right? So they just throw 2,000 years at it, but they missed everything about that site. Like they're like, so they were right about the date or close to it. Now on Easter Island, they're giving a date here, but it has no context because it's in the fucking middle in this Pacific. There is no context to date any of this, right? But they're just guessing, and they're like, guessing,
and how a lot of it that it fits their.
A lot of it has to do with paradigm. When Europeans show up, because like with their story, which is that the natives like kind of destroyed the island and were dying out because they had killed all the trees. They can't have been there much earlier than the Europeans got there because they're dying, right?
Yeah.
The island does not sustain people, really, in its current state. But it does. It does sustain people. It just like you can't do like, okay, they don't have any cattle. There's no,
right,
you know, but they fish, obviously. They live off the ocean, but you can't really do any agriculture, you know. Right. But I think the other idea is that, like, so when was the last time this volcano went off? You know, has it been active? Right? But I don't think it's been active that recently. It can't have been active that recently. And obviously it's never been active since the heads were put up. Otherwise they would all be buried under the lava. But all the material of the mountain is sort of flowing down off of it into the ocean slowly because
Right.
the trees are all gone. But where did all that material come from? That mountain probably should just kind of be a rock in the water.
Well,
So-
it's like scree from the mountain, right? I mean,
Yeah, but there's like soil and plants, and you
Yeah.
know there is plants, but it's like if you look at it on Google Earth, it's mostly grasses.
Right.
There's like grasses, and so it's kind of like dirt that's been caught in the mountain, and it's like but there's a lot of it, enough 30 feet to bury the statues in,
why would you put your graveyard on a volcano?
because when it blows up, you go to space.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we're talking about a pre-ice age thing here,
Yeah.
which means that if you look at the area, it's thinking the ocean is 400 feet lower. Suddenly, you're not looking at a little bitty island, but a gigantic landmass. I mean,
Yeah.
not gigantic.
Have they done like surveys in the ocean around it to see?
I've got
what's
underwater
down-
pictures of Easter Island heads laying on the seafloor. So
Yeah, that's freaking badass.
yeah, like I got this badass picture of two divers taking a picture of it. And it's like laying on the seafloor, and like I put a motto above it. It's like there's no such thing as out of place artifacts, only out of date theories.
Yeah.
So I think we can end with that note. Was that a note? It was B flat. You can email us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. You can go to the blog, which is still in its kind of like beginning state. It's very
Infancy.
very plain. Yes, it's infancy, but it's a blog. It's
Snake eggs.
Snake eggs. Shit. Shut up. It's brothersoftheserpent.blogspot.com. You can leave comments there, and we will get them. And you can talk shit.
I won't check them.
He will if I'm like, dude, you got to go read the comments.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, you can get a hold of us that way. We like any questions you guys have, like anything that you think you would like to hear us discuss. Like we'll totally do it. Or if you have any questions of any of the subjects we have talked about, or you want to tell us that we're completely fucking wrong on everything we've said, that's great.
Yeah.
We probably are. So so that's how you can get a hold of us there. And we will see you guys next time
Thanks.
when the snakes come out.
Snake bros.